I think she, yeah, I can't remember, she might have said, but I can't remember where she was. Yeah, but in that case, you can't say it.
No, I wouldn't think of it. I wouldn't think of it.
A month in.
Are you still
Australia,
sporting
New
your tan
Zealand.
from Australia, or were you in New
I
Zealand?
don't, I was in New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was, if you were gonna get a tan, it was much more likely to be New Zealand than Tasmania.
Oh, yeah?
Tasmania's further south,
Yeah, you could,
and in that hemisphere, south means
Oh,
north
cold,
here,
yeah.
so.
Right. But it was hot, cause I remember when you were there, I was hearing the news, somewhere in Australia, it was like 115.
Right, when we landed in Melbourne, it was 114,
wow.
yeah, so it was pretty.
Yeah, it changed, quite a bit of a change from here.
Yeah, it didn't change much though, cause right through the
But I
Australian
think
Open, they had to
here-
close the dome that, in Rod Laver Stadium, I think, because of heat.
Really?
they couldn't
Yeah.
keep up.
But I meant leaving
Yeah, the
here,
players were, you
in
know,
in the
passing
winter,
out.
leaving here in the winter and then getting off the plane in 115 degrees, that's
Yeah.
the change.
Yeah,
Hard to
well, that
adjust.
wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It was very dry. It really wasn't,
Yeah,
it wasn't like 115 degrees would be here.
yeah,
They always claimed Arizona's a dry heat, and I got off the plane in Phoenix, and Phoenix is not a dry city because you have all the lawns, the golf courses, the pools, and they all create kind of an artificial,
Humidity.
yeah, and so you,
Oh, really?
yeah, Phoenix, you actually feel a lot of humidity.
Hmm.
Once you get out of the city and away from the development, yes, it's dry, but not in Phoenix.
and you can just fry the eggs on the sidewalk and stuff in the
Yeah,
summer.
I was there, I forget, last time I was there, it was 106 and humid as hell,
Wow.
and it was not pleasant.
No, I guess not.
Well, shall we, start our meeting?
Why not?
Why not? So we're not, we're just having discussions tonight. Do I need to appoint Rich as an alternate or not?
For votes, yes, for just discussions, no,
Okay.
and voting for minutes.
And
Yeah,
Rich
that-
was,
fact, I would
Rich was
have to-
absent last time,
Yeah,
I
so.
would have to,
Yeah, well, minutes, because there is no statutory requirement to approve minutes. It is typically just something that's done amongst boards and the board and alternate members, and alternate members can vote on them.
okay.
Let's go ahead and do the minutes.
Yeah,
Anybody,
double type.
you've got a couple things,
Well, I
Tim?
had one thing, right on item 2, the second paragraph. But noted that the board had started working on, I was wondering whether we want to put clarifying some zoning ordinances.
Yeah, or I had said,
And then an S, we need an S on ordinances.
or working on some zoning ordinance revisions?
Yeah, I think I missed a word in,
Yeah, well, that's fine too, whatever, yeah.
Okay. And then the third line in that same paragraph, there's like a semicolon and then a capital H.
Yep.
Maybe change the semicolon to a period and then
Yep.
start a new sentence?
Wow. Okay.
And then down, well, the last paragraph at the bottom,
Yep,
planning and zoning minister had sent the board members information provided, I think we just need
yes.
minor. That's all I have.
Do we have a motion to accept the minutes
So,
and seconded?
Tim moved, or I
Okay.
seconded.
All those in favor, say aye.
I,
Okay. Rich is abstaining because he was
not there.
not there. Okay, so, first item on our agenda is master plan housing chapter, discussion. I think, I think we want to somehow start to talk about writing something on that. And I feel a little bit uncomfortable moving forward on that. I think I'd prefer to wait till Vicky gets back. And she's not gonna be here our next meeting either. But I think it would be wise, I found it kind of enlightening to review the master plan. You know, in terms of writing the chapter, I mean, is there any kind of an outline or anything that people have used, or we kind of have to develop our own?
Kind of develop your own.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's some things in the master, some parts of the master plan that you could, or that we could use some of those ideas, you know. I mean, there's things in there that talk about, indirectly talk about
Right.
housing and all that, so
Mhm.
that can be incorporated somewhat, I think.
Yeah, a lot of the current master plan, a lot of you know, there's a lot of information about, or they start with, kind of a historical look at what, that chapter, the information in that chapter, so, if it's, I'm trying to think what the chapters, but you just gotta look at a historical, the current, and then look to the future, and then it always, there would be recommendations. And those recommendations would be what you would use to look at zoning amendments in the future. So the idea is to kind of have a past, present, and future view, and then recommendations how to go from that present to the future view.
Right. But at some point, we have to, in the housing chapter, you'd have to have an idea of what we thought, what direction we thought the town was going in, right?
Well, that's something
I
that
mean-
you'll eventually have to do, but, I think you can look at the past and present and start getting that
Right.
kind of put together, and then,
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, and you mean some of the stuff that's already in the master plan?
no,
Talks about, yeah.
well, some of it talks about housing, and, you could pull that, and, just the trends of, we know that, Lyme was a farming community years ago, and we've, it's gone from farming to more of a bedroom community for the Hanover, Lebanon, White River Junction, I forget what, micro,
Oh, God, you're right, there's a clever name for that.
yeah. The Census Bureau has a name
Yes,
for it.
right.
so-
Yeah.
But it describes that. And then you could, I don't know if, well, you can talk about what types of housing is currently in line, single family versus duplex, multifamily, where we know that predominantly the town is single family housing with a, small number of duplexes and small number of.
ADUs maybe.
Yeah, and, they talk about the number of ADUs, and just kind of give a snapshot of 2016 where the town is, and then when you figure out where you wanna go,
Mhm.
then you can write, this is where you would go, where the town seems to wanna go in the future.
Yeah.
And then, based on that change between now and future, you would come up with a series of recommendations. And those recommendations would then be able to translate into, changes to the zoning ordinance, to the subdivision regulations. Because basically, anytime you change the zoning ordinance, you should be able to go back to the master plan and say, this is why, the master plan supports this change to the zoning ordinance.
Right, and in theory, it's what the town, the majority of the people in town decided they want.
So are we really gonna talk about this? Because there's a lot to unpack here.
Not tonight.
So
but,
then where are we going with this conversation?
So,
Well, no, because it's taken, in the past, when we've changed the master plan, it's a lot of work, I mean, it's a huge amount of work.
well, yeah, and this is also a chapter that doesn't exist, and it's something that I think is optional. It's addressed in some other parts of the master plan.
Something
But-
that, excuse me,
No, go ahead.
it's something that occurs to me, playing off both Nat and what Tim said, is there any value in thinking about hiring a consultant to come and do this? I mean, David talks about, there are templates, there's a zillion templates,
Mhm.
but would it help to have somebody come in and do that? We have to pay them money, but we haven't had town meeting yet, so, you know, we could ask to put some money in it. But I think there's two things here. One is just the hard work of writing something.
Right.
That's really hard. The second is, thinking about Jan Williams posted that summary of the housing survey that said, this is a divided town. There's some people that think,
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there.
you know,
We're not gonna talk about anything about the housing survey.
And we
Okay.
can't really go on with this conversation without having that conversation.
Well, that's why I said.
So
Yeah.
that's why I'm bringing this up. There's a
Okay.
lot to unpack here,
Yeah.
and
Alright.
we can't do it
yeah.
because of legal,
We can talk about the housing in the past, we can talk about housing in the present, we cannot talk about anything dealing with the survey.
All right.
right.
That's the,
But I don't know, it seems to me that what hasn't been said here is that you need to know what direction the town wants to go in.
Right.
Okay, we all knew that, right from the get-go,
Yeah.
and that's the issue. And so we can't talk about the survey, then we can't talk, because that's the part that's missing. We know, I've been over the old, the master
Master
plan,
plan, right.
and so I know what it said, because I was the one who wrote the introduction to the survey.
Right.
And it was coming really from the experience of the master plan. Trying to set it in a way that it made sense in the continuity of Lyme. But at this point, if we're gonna do something, if we're gonna talk about the survey, if we're gonna talk about our recommendations, then we need to speak from something.
Yeah.
And we either speak from that survey or we don't. If we don't, then we really have nothing to add to the master plan.
Yeah, this is true. Well, that's why I'm thinking we should forego.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agreed with that,
Then-
but then he didn't seem to be foregoing, so.
Right, yeah.
No,
So-
so we can't get anywhere because we don't,
Okay.
So let's move on to happier things,
Yeah.
zoning ordinance.
Well, actually, let me just follow up on that. David, have you heard anything from town council?
have not.
Okay, thank you. My council was gonna talk to him, and I don't know what's happened, so,
I do know that they have been in contact, and that's all I know.
fair enough, thank you.
So, I was thinking we could talk about, zoning ordinance amendments, and in particular, the work that's been done on the transient, definitions and lodging definitions. And I was also, I don't think we got an extra copy of that, but I'd be up for talking about this in general terms, Hebe's list of other uses that she provided.
Which one do you wanna do first?
I think that we could go through, this February 20th.
the transient thing, definitions of transient.
Well, yeah, the whole document, it starts with definitions.
Because you wrote those in that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can, I did read through this, Nat, and, can I get a concise, help me understand the problem we're trying to solve here? I mean, this is a very long document.
Right.
Turn this into.
It is,
ordinance.
and it was trying to be comprehensive, that's why. So, but the main problem we were trying to solve was this notion of what is transient.
Yeah, 'cause
So
we-
actually, the most important sentence in this whole document is the first one,
Mhm.
which is the definition of transient,
Mhm.
okay?
And-
And the reason we wanted to solve that is
Mhm.
because that was the crux of our frustration regarding home on the Connecticut. And probably will continue to be, and it wasn't just our frustration, it was Lauren's frustration. Because,
Mhm.
because everybody had a different idea of what he was really running.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that ended up having ramifications regarding code and, and frankly, it came down to, was he running something for transient people or not?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because if it wasn't transient, then it was something other than transient, and so it therefore might be judgeable on a different set of criteria. So what I tried to do was
Mhm.
first define transient, and then, define sort of derivatives of transient, which were short-term and long-term,
Mhm.
and then define a bunch of different housings and accommodations, and place them in the context
Mhm.
of this transient versus non-transient versus long-term or short-term. Place them in that context, okay? So that as just something that characterized them, not really defined them, but
Mhm.
characterized them.
Okay.
And we talked last time about whether that should be considered a guideline or a rigorous rule or whatever. And I guess I've thought a lot about that or a little bit at any rate, and decided that it's really more of a guideline. It's something that characterizes it, but it doesn't necessarily define it. And then I just tried to be comprehensive because I tried to think, what exists in Lyme already, what exists in the surrounding communities and therefore might be existing in Lyme.
Mhm.
And put those all down here and talk about what typically was the occupant length, the use type, and just some typical characteristics, which all help to define what it was.
Mhm.
Now,
So
how does this translate into an ordinance? It's probably more for reference, or maybe to beef up definitions, or maybe it's a whole new category, a table of characteristics. I do think it probably helps us consider things like, boarding houses, or what indeed is that thing that's for neuro patients on Route 10, not about.
UDS, right up.
Yeah, right about
Right,
100
right,
yards
just over
from here.
yeah.
And then what indeed is Lauren running,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I couldn't see where home in Connecticut fit into anything here.
Right,
I think,
it doesn't fit in precisely. It's
No.
sort of somewhere
Well, it could
in
be
a boarding
hosted
house.
long-term rental, but then it says where the owner occupied, use of a one-family owner occupied dwelling, so that isn't what he has, so, because he has a one-family dwelling.
Right,
So it doesn't really fit, but, I mean, maybe that's beside the point, but anyway.
well, he could be running a room, I'm not sure that the owner occupied or hosted or non-hosted necessarily applies to what Lauren is doing. I think he's more of a rooming house.
I think the extended stay, hotel / lodging is where it fits on the top of the third page.
Yeah, 30 days not permanent. 30 days plus not permanent.
Yeah.
So permanent means more than 5 years?
No permanent be, you know, well, and that's where you needed to come up with that
I know.
definition of what's permanent.
I think the only difference is that he doesn't have any kitchenette units.
Yes, he has,
He has
Yes.
sinks. I don't think he has kitchenette units in common areas.
yes.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but, you know, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Are we trying to find a way to make him absolutely completely fit within the ordinance? You know, the fire marshal, if I understood the discussion, the fire marshal was classed this as an apartment building.
Right.
Guys, this is like,
Well, for the
there's
state-
nothing
state-
else that this is but an apartment building. And what would we do? What difference would we make? Would we say, oh, wait, you're not allowed to have an apartment building in the rural district and therefore you have to shut down?
Well,
I mean, what?
I don't think
what-
we can do that.
Well,
I think we
I
made a
think
mistake.
that he's grandfathered in.
yeah.
I think we have to define things that we want, that's what this whole table is for.
Mhm.
Things that we say, you can definitely do this,
Mhm.
or things that need a site plan review,
Mhm.
which it seems to me is a way of going through what the guy plans to build or do,
Mhm.
and then characterizing it, and then deciding, in retrospect, what does the zoning say about this? Does it like it, or does it not like it?
Mhm.
And so it's really for going forward. But the reason I bring up Lauren is because he is a perfect reason why it should have been done in the past.
Yeah, because I think we did make a mistake with that, because right in the beginning, we didn't really define anything, we just kind of let it go through. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
I mean,
So,
It's-
when he, Tim, are you suggesting that when he came and he brought his initial application to us, we should have said, wait a minute, stop right there?
Yeah, because we didn't, and I don't even know if we knew exactly what he was doing at that point.
Right?
You know,
Yeah.
and then we found out later that he had long-term and he had
Yeah,
short-term.
but again, the issue is that under the definitions of the zoning, there's nothing that he's doing is contrary to the zoning. So you would have no right to say, nope, we're not gonna approve this because you don't fit in the zoning.
well, site plan review does allow you a bit of discretion, right? That's what the whole idea is. Otherwise, why would you have a site plan review? Why wouldn't you just have yes and no's?
Well, your site plan review is to ensure that any development, and it's for commercial or multifamily, that development for those types of development, follow a set of criteria. And site plan review is not a yes or no answer. Site plan review is, do you meet all the criteria? If not, you need to change your site plan to meet that criteria. Then if you don't, then you're not willing to, then you get a no.
Okay, well then maybe this speaks to what ends up being a site plan review question form. You know, I mean, maybe that's where it sits, and maybe that's what is needed. I mean, some little box that says, Lauren, when you take ownership of this, what duration of stays are you going to be accommodating? And if he doesn't get the right answer, we say, well, actually, you can't do that.
Well, I mean.
Now, you would need to have that in the zoning ordinance, because your site plan review is not going to be able to say this use is good or not. The uses are defined in the zoning.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, I mean, yes, okay, so there's a couple of ways you can deal with that within this framework. If he says, I can't deal with that, I am gonna rent to nurses that are going to stay for 6 months, but not years, then we have to kick him to a different category. And that's all it is, and then we look at that category and we say, well, do we want that category in here, here, or here?
Yeah.
And that's what we have to decide, you know, does this meet this, but we've got a lot of site plan review answers to the, in table 4.1, you know, so we don't have yeses and nos. You know, and if we've got a bunch of criteria, then, and everybody has to meet this, the criteria, then again, this probably speaks more to those criteria than it does because ultimately, those are the kinds of questions that we would wanna ask them.
So I'm gonna come back to my original question. Help me understand the problem. If somebody's got something and it's got a bunch of units in it, and people stay for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, 6 months, or 4 years, what difference does it make to the people of Lyme? I mean, does it, I mean, I'm asking this.
I don't think it may not make very much difference to the people of Lyme, but it may make difference to some, particularly the abutters. But it makes a difference to the person who's developing this, because he doesn't wanna wind up like Lauren. This sort of, all of a sudden, somebody considers him something that he didn't think he was, and sticks him with a gigantic laundry list of changes he's gotta make, and he doesn't have enough money to do it. It protects him from that,
Right,
So-
but I think also-
because we have done the forethought.
But also it's precedent, see, I think we always have to remember that precedent, you know, what we do with the zoning, it sets a precedent. So you might say, somebody's doing something, and oh yeah, that's fine there, but you're setting a precedent, and then you say, well, you want this all over the rest of the rural district. Right, you know, that's the whole point.
And I
Right.
think one of
Yeah,
the issues
I
is
got
that
that.
you're looking at the number of units he has, and there is nothing in the zoning that prevents him from increasing that as long as he can meet the site plan review criteria.
So he still needs parking, he still needs septic, he needs water, he needs,
Right.
I mean, you know, he's showed that his
Yeah.
driveway
Safety,
can.
right, those types of things, because that's what site plan review is.
Mhm.
That is reviewing a site to make sure that you are not creating problems.
Yeah, and
Public health problems.
Pretty much, you know, you have snow storage areas for,
Sure, right.
Yeah,
you know,
and
can you,
lighting.
the stormwater that your runoff that you're creating, do you have sufficient areas to deal with that?
Yeah. right.
That's what site plan review is for. Site plan review is not a tool to stop development. And
Yeah.
that has to be very clear to everyone,
I
that that's,
didn't, nobody said that.
Yeah, and that.
Nobody said that, it's just, the question was, what's the problem that this is meant to solve?
Right.
And the problem that it's meant to solve is the misunderstanding that you sit in a box that you're not believed, that you turn out you're not in. And that revolved around, you know, I
So-
guess as I see it, it revolved around how long the people were staying.
Help me understand why that's important.
I don't know, it certainly seemed to be important when the fire marshal was told by our fire chief that he has people that are staying for 6 months at a time. That suddenly changed
Right.
the whole thing.
So.
So
but-
that's
but
why
is
it
that-
was
but
important.
Is that the job of the planning board to know these things?
well, I think the real,
You know, so I mean, this is a philosophical question, just absolutely.
It seems
I'd
like,
say-
who would address it other than the planning board?
Well, I mean, I think.
Who would address it other than, how would it be addressed other than with the zoning ordinance?
Oh, I think it's very simple. I mean, there almost certainly needs to be site plan review. I mean, I'm very comfortable with that. One of the things of site plan review is to talk to the fire chief and say, this is what I'm up to. And the fire chief says, okay, and they're gonna be here for like 2-3 nights, maybe a week. That's B&B, I don't know. This is big enough, I don't know. I'm gonna send it to the fire marshal. The fire marshal is gonna say, you need these, you need to meet these standards of, it's gotta have fire extinguishers, it's gotta have this, you gotta, you know, all these things. I think it's important that the planning board not get in the middle of these things, because we don't know, we're not experts. And so, to say very clearly, you need to get a sign off from the fire chief, or if he's not happy or feels unqualified to answer this, from the state fire marshal. And I'm completely content to say that's a condition of site plan review. Somebody that knows about health, life safety, that kind of stuff says, oh yeah, this is fine, or he needs to do this to meet it. I think the duration that people are there is a matter between the owner and the fire officials.
But in the
Well,
bigger
if the-
picture, if Lauren has a hotel that we're saying it's a hotel basically, or whatever.
Okay,
In the rural
we-
district,
you
are
have
we
to-
saying that anybody can put a hotel anywhere in the rural district?
You can,
You can.
Yeah,
I mean, that's.
but that's what I mean,
That's logic.
that's the question.
It's allowed now.
Whether we wanna, yeah,
Right, and so,
but that's what we need to decide, that's what I'm saying.
well, and again, it kind of sugars out to
That's-
what difference
So
does
that's
it.
site plan review.
Yes,
Mhm.
but again, it's, a Motel 6 comes in and says, we're gonna put up a motel in the rural district,
Mhm.
Right.
meets dimensional controls for everything. They have septic, they have water, they have parking,
Driveways.
yep, everything. It meets the site plan review criteria, then.
So is that anywhere in town, David, or?
I believe it's,
Well, it's
It
rural
looks like
districts and
it's
the
not
commercial
East
and-
Lyme, Skiway,
Right.
Mountain and
Mountain and
Forest,
Forest.
Holt's Ledge, and, yeah, that's it.
But anywhere else in town?
yeah.
Anywhere else is.
So, yeah, I mean, do we wanna have Motel 6 anywhere in town? I don't know.
No, you,
I would
since,
think, to me personally, I would
So-
like to have a little more control.
since
So-
1989, you've allowed it, and,
Right, but we haven't had an issue because nobody's done it.
right, but,
But
you know,
you
again,
certainly
this,
could in the
um,
future, so.
you know, and I think,
Well, so,
I'm going to call the planning board out on a kind of a knee-jerk reaction with Lauren, that I think a lot of people were unhappy about the number of units and what was going on there, that it's not necessarily, you know, the issue of the length of stay. But I think, you know, the reaction that I saw was number of units, and people feeling that that was just way too big, even though the zoning does not restrict it.
the whole thing started because, or the problems for Lauren started because of the referral to the fire marshal.
Yes,
And
because.
that was based on the length of stay. That was my understanding of the exact.
Well,
Well, the fire marshal, their office, you know, they have,
They have standards.
well, they have, you know, just like the zoning, here's a box, and everything has to fit inside that box.
Right.
And so they don't have a long-term stay, you know, bed and breakfast type, you know, it's either a bed and breakfast, and they set whatever their rules for bed and breakfast, and they looked at this and said, no, this is not a bed and breakfast, we are calling, in our world, a hotel, or apartments, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that's just because the state fire marshal, their box isn't big enough to handle those variations. So they had to put it somewhere, and so it became an apartment.
But I think the whole thing started when Rich went in there for some other reason, and he looked around and he said, whoa, we got a problem here, there's all this stuff. And that's when it really
Yeah,
started, and if he hadn't gone in there, it could have been years.
yeah.
Lauren
And again, that's
never had to do
why
it.
site plan review works, because, you know,
Yeah.
that gives the opportunity.
Right.
But I think,
Well, I don't know, I think as much as anything, I wanted to define these accommodations, and then I wanted to revisit table 1 and decide, should it be changed?
Yep.
Should there be more no's on there? You know, based on how I characterized the properties,
Yep.
or the various types of properties. And so, the issue was precisely that. And that's
Mhm.
that's the issue that it speaks to. I just did the table the way that I did it because it followed the categories that are currently there, which is basically the lodging and accommodations category, you know, just drawn into every single lodging and accommodation that I defined, which was, you know, site plan review for most of Lyme. Now, there are some business activities that are no and some that are clearly yes. Accommodations are all yes with an asterisk, I guess. And the question is, should they be? So I guess that was where I was going.
Yes, uh-huh.
Or
I see.
where I thought I was
So-
going. And I don't know whether that's where people wanted me to go, but I didn't get a lot of direction. So what I did was go into the Hanover ordinance and try and figure out what they defined and where they allowed stuff. And I did not make decisions that were, because we don't really have spaces, districts that are equivalent, that you can draw a one-to-one relationship to with Hanover. So, and their, you know, their residential district is not really like our rural district. There's a big difference between them.
Sure. Yeah, lots of
and-
housing, neighborhood.
And the aesthetic is different. So, you know, I guess that's what I was doing. And if that wasn't what I was supposed to do, then.
Well,
Okay.
I mean,
No, I think,
No, you did a great job on,
yeah.
It looks good.
on the information, I just, you know, I'm looking at this and, you know, and I agree with Rich, you know, what is the board trying to achieve by this? You know, what is it,
Well, it would have to, the board is always trying to achieve what the citizenry want, okay? I mean, that's within reason.
yeah,
And I guess that's the way I look at it. And so if you're thinking about changing something, then you have to ask a lot of people. You either have to do focus groups, you have to do a survey, you have to try and get some data that supports one way or the other. And that's the way it moves forward, and that's why it's so slow, because you
Yeah.
need to be informed.
But I think,
So,
also though, Nat, I think in the past, you know, we're all elected, members of the board are elected, so we do have some autonomy, you know, among ourselves. We don't always have to go back and say, oh, we gotta do this whole survey about what the town wants and stuff, because we're elected and people supposedly trust us for what we think. So there is some autonomy there that the board can decide sometimes what they think is right.
I suppose that's true, Tim, but
I mean, that's what's happening.
from
in the
my
past.
own point of view, I wanna be on that leg as little as possible.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that.
I would
we don't-
I'd rather be able to point to something and say, this
Yeah.
wasn't just my idea.
Well, no, I'm not saying that the board shouldn't try to get the feeling of the town, but I'm just saying that we do have some autonomy. You know, if there's a question between something and something that's not clear with the town, so we can make a decision. And that's, you know, that's happened in the past. Because we are elected and because people in theory, because you know, just like politicians, you elect people and you trust what
But
they're
we're,
gonna do.
in this particular situation, we're talking about, okay, maybe we wanna change this so that Motel 6s can't be in the rural district.
Right.
You know, that would be a significant change in this table and in our ordinances. To put a no where that SPR is.
Right.
So you'd really want to be able to point to something that says, this isn't just my idea of what should happen, this is the whole town's feeling.
Right.
Or the
In this
majority
case-
of the town's.
Right, in this case, it's true.
Right,
yeah.
because that's a
So-
big change.
Yeah.
that's one of the
And that's
reasons.
that's why I'm.
Yeah, bigger changes, yes, but I just meant.
Right,
some of the-
well, this was the one we were talking about.
Right,
You have to remember that you also, that's why you have public hearings on,
Sure.
and one of the ways is the board can do is, you know, as a board, come up with, you know, a zoning amendment that you think is appropriate. You bring it to public hearing and let the town tell you whether they agree or not, and then, once again, the town is going to have the opportunity to say yes or no on a ballot.
Right,
So there is,
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of checks and
Right,
balances.
but-
there is that feedback,
But
you know,
at
it's not.
some point, you're gonna have to say, this is what I believe the town should do, which is funny, because we shouldn't really be influencing them in that way. But at some point, you're going to have to, because they're gonna wanna know.
Well,
Is the zoning behind this? Is the planning board behind this? And so I wanna be able to point at something and say why I am or am not behind it. So, you know, that's, and that, again, that's the leg I wanna be on, if I can.
Yep.
And I wanna be arbitrary or just going with my own instinct as little as possible, because that could be wrong.
Well,
Rich, I wonder if we should put this on the table, just table this discussion too, because it in large measure hinges on what people think. I think the housing survey plays into this as well. And so I guess I need to make a motion to say
Well-
that in the absence of being able to know what people think about it, that we table it and go on to think about what we can do about the zoning.
Well, this is,
This is zoning.
a zoning issue.
I think we can talk about this. My own feeling is.
I mean, the housing
that-
thing
that
wasn't
we
really
didn't-
talking about
That's right, it wasn't talking
transient,
about lodging and
hotels and-
accommodations.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
Was it?
I don't think
Did we
so.
say anything about lodging and accommodation?
no, it was
Probably not,
more
no.
residential stuff.
Yeah, so
Okay,
I'm
all right.
not sure that survey, this would probably be something, I mean, the problem with and I agree with you, we do have a lot of mechanisms for finding out what people think, but they are woefully underused by the citizenry of Lyme. And so you go through, open meetings, and you go through even what we call forums, and that are publicized. And you really get very small groups
Yes,
of
that is
people
absolutely
that
true.
actually are engaged in the discussion, and it's very hard to base your opinion on a very small group of people. So that's why surveys are so important, and, I guess surveys are a pain in the neck, I guess a lot of people feel that way, but frankly, I think that the whole thing should be driven by surveys.
Yeah, again, on a
And
survey.
I'm not alone there, that's why you get so many surveys
Right.
on the internet. Everywhere you go,
Mhm.
somebody wants to be able to point to something and say, this is why we did this.
but then our surveys are difficult too, because everybody has different ideas, so you look at the survey and you say, well, what are they really, what is it?
Right,
It's not strict
right,
cut
but
and
I
dry.
guess, just to answer all this pushback about, what I'm thinking, it would be, if my feeling about the direction of the planning board is survey, more and more and more. Make them easier, get them done, and then, address the problem, and then move on to the next question. Because I think that's the only way to move. And until people get involved enough so that they show up for forums, and maybe then they, but I guess I just don't feel like, there's another way
Well,
to
but I
do
think-
it without being arbitrary.
Right, but I think in the past, as I was saying, the board has made some decisions without a lot of surveys, and then it gets voted on, and then, so that what it really comes down to, and that's when because unfortunately, way less than half the people in town vote, so you still don't, but that's the
Right.
best we can do, so,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think this is an interesting set of uses that, I think many of them are out of character with what many people would think, and maybe the likelihood of them landing here is slim because we don't have a sewer system or a water system, but, yeah, I look at, you know, lodging and accommodation, and the fact that, you know, site plan review is only going to highlight the issues that we've just talked about. It's not going to say, no, you can't do this in this zone.
Unless we put a no there, unless we change
Right,
table
unless the
one.
zoning.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless we, yeah,
Right,
unless we change
right.
table one, but
And-
then, but that does, this whole thing does beg that question, should we change table one?
Yeah.
That's the whole,
Yeah, do you want motels all over?
the rural district,
Well,
exactly.
motels, and I mean, the other thing that I get concerned with is, you know, what Dartmouth might want to do. You know, they could pick off a piece of property and decide that they're gonna put in,
A radiation storage facility.
well, no, I'm thinking
That would
more,
not be allowed.
Nuclear waste,
Not
I'm
be
just
allowed.
thinking in terms of, you know, a
Actually,
place
it's in the zoning.
to,
nuclear waste.
you know, keep people,
nuclear.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know, housing.
okay, you mean, you mean a detention center?
yeah, detention center, just for 4 years.
Yeah.
No, but they could certainly, you know, I mean, they could certainly decide that they wanted to have, you know, graduate student housing, or they wanted to have undergraduate student housing. And,
Yeah.
you know,
So maybe we should add student housing in
Yes.
one of the categories.
Yes, the dormitory is not there, you're right.
But David, under the zoning
well, the
now,
hostel is sort of, but,
if Dartmouth wanted to build a 50-unit housing, you know, for graduate students or undergrad, whatever, could they do that anywhere? I mean, could they do that?
Well, I think their argument would be it's transient housing, because it's not,
It's 9 months, they're basically.
yeah, but it's not, they're not, you know, they would, the students would, if they're gonna register to vote, they're gonna register in Hanover, because that's where the town that they're going to school in.
Right.
And that's typically where,
That's where the domicile question comes in.
but typically when you are, the states allow you to register to vote in the town that you are going to school in. So if, even if you live in another, you know, town, it's where you physically sleep,
Right.
you're going to school in, and so you show your student ID at the town offices, and they say, yes, we can register to you to vote.
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
It's dicey, I mean.
it's, yeah, it's one of
you know,
those,
If you.
Do they really have to show an ID?
I don't know if it's,
mean,
no, I don't think.
I'm
they-
just gonna say, a lot of people don't have to
I
show
think-
an ID, it's weird.
Well, they
It
do
says
now.
that they are, you know, you need to show that you are living in the town, and so student ID is going to be your easiest, you know, most people show an electric bill,
Or if you register your car.
right, you register your car.
So,
Okay.
but anyway, they could, Dartmouth could put up something, what, any size?
Up to whatever the dimensional controls, so,
Right.
you know,
I mean,
7,000 square foot.
If they had 25 acres, they could put on,
About 5 acres, so you know, 5 clear acres is going to give you the maximum footprint and lot coverage.
oh yeah, there's footprint, isn't there?
Right, so you'd have, be limited to 7,000 square feet of footprint.
Oh, well, then they couldn't really do a big,
Well, they could do several buildings.
oh, you could put multiple, yeah. I guess
Right,
that's
because
true.
As long as
the other is lot
As long as-
coverage.
right.
You could put in
And then
3,
Gross
Yeah.
floor area.
So you could-
as long as you didn't go over the gross floor area for each building.
Right,
And 35 foot, so you could
right.
probably get 3 stories, at least 2, if not
Right.
3.
Yeah,
So you could probably get 50, 60 dorm rooms.
so, yeah, so it comes down to, you know, does the town want that? I mean, everywhere, I mean, maybe the commercial district would be fine. And even the Lyme, well, there isn't any room in the Lyme Common probably, but anyway, that's the issue, you know, that's what you have to think about.
Buy the
What-
pit from Brett and
What?
buy the pit from Brett.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of the problems though with, you know, getting student housing in Lyme is the distance.
Right.
You know, you start putting students out here, they either have to have their own vehicle or have,
Right.
they have to start providing transportation.
Right,
And, you know,
Right.
students are not gonna be happy with a bus system that, you know, they have to rely on to.
but the college could build housing like they just did, you probably saw in the paper, they just opened it, I think it was 21 units by Sachem Village there. They just opened that a couple weeks ago, and, because BLOC, one of her things that she said when she first came, she was wanna really increase the housing for the college.
Mhm.
So they built these 21 units, and they're like 1, 2, 3 bedroom, I think. And they're renting them for $54,000 a year. And that money comes right out of the salary of the professor or whatever lives, so the college doesn't have to worry about not getting their money, because it automatically comes out of their salary. I mean, it's a really great deal, $54,000 a year, $4,400 a month for each one of those buildings.
How many bedrooms then?
Well, a couple anyway, I forget how many, yeah, a couple, maybe 3, but they wanted houses, they wanted actual houses for, see, that's the other, I'm getting off the subject, but maybe you saw in the paper that, I think a week ago or so, they were interviewing an administrator at the hospital, and she was involved in the housing for the hospital. So she was saying that the problem they're having is that people come to the hospital to work, and maybe they live in an apartment initially, but if they wanna stay at the hospital, you know, long-term, and be a real long-term employee, they wanna buy a house. So she's saying that they can't find houses. So she's saying, well, we don't need more of these huge apartment buildings like they're building down Lebanon. We need housing, because if the people can't find a house, they leave. And that's why they're having a hard time keeping long-term people at the hospital, you know, more, you know, whatever, not just necessarily nurses, but all the other people. So it was interesting for her, you know, that take on that. You know, she's saying we really need houses for these people to
Well,
live in
would
long-term.
condominiums help?
I don't know,
I mean, at least you'd have equity in the,
yeah,
in where you're living,
Right.
where your money's, you're building equity.
right, but if you're a family, you know, you work at the hospital and you got 2 or 3 kids, and you know, they want a house, they wanna live in a house. So anyway, that was her take, and it was interesting, you know, to hear
Right.
that. It was really, you know, she's saying, oh, we don't need any more of these apartments, because that, you know, that's not what they want when they work a long time at the hospital. Anyway, that's beside the point.
So I guess, you know, getting back to the question of what issue are we trying to solve, I mean, you know, we've got Lauren's thing, I mean, I think Lauren would have been stopped right away if, one of the things I've seen in several of the ordinances, and AI kind of tells me that some ordinances use like a Webster dictionary, you know, they say if it's not defined, then, you know, look up in Webster's dictionary or something like that. So Lauren was able to justify what he was doing because we didn't have a period of time that that defined when a person was a transient versus a non-transient person. So I get,
Because he also had an existing structure, right?
Yeah.
Cause he never would have been able to build that thing.
Yes, you would have.
So a new structure of that size for multiple units in the rural district? We would
As long as
allow-
it's transient housing, yes.
As long as it, okay, so there's the definition again.
Right.
Okay, so now this definition that we didn't need suddenly appears.
Right, because when John.
Well, because, you know, it's
So
built.
then,
Yeah, see, now, when John, I forget his last name, built that 30 years ago, whatever it was a bed and breakfast. It wasn't longer, it definitely was transient, and that's what it was, and that's what it was built as. And then Laura changed it.
No, he didn't change anything. under the
Well, he
zoning.
changed it
No.
from transient to.
No, it's still transient. He did not change, the zoning did not change.
right,
Well, but
if we never
saying-
defined transient,
Well,
so we
no, I'm just
never,
saying
we
if-
never had.
he pushed the limits
Yeah,
on what
exactly.
No, he's not.
transient is.
He's,
Well, I'm just saying if-
there are no limits of what transient. He is, doing
Well,
what is allowed, you know.
There's a general consensus of what transient means.
Yeah, if we're saying it's less than 30
You
days.
can't say that it can mean anything.
I don't care what you believe. What I say, what I see in the ordinance
Right.
is
Right,
what the law is.
right,
But
I
which is
don't
why
care
I
your
was
opinion.
asked to write about the
exactly.
ordinance
Yeah.
and the issue of transient.
but again, I mean.
And why the first sentence is the most important.
Maybe this is why we might need something that says if it's not defined, you know, look in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, latest edition or something. Because, I mean, when you look in the dictionary, it definitely talks about transient and it definitely talks about 30 days.
Although it doesn't, the definitions don't necessarily have to define, or they don't have to, they can be something like generally refers to,
Yeah.
you know,
there you
and so there are ways around Merriam-Webster.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think the question that you need to think about is there any issue with having that type of housing?
Yeah, that's what it all comes down to.
I mean, we've, you know, because you had to go to site plan review, fire department looked in, said, ooh, we have some issues, those are
Right.
being addressed.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, this whole thing has been a win, because it worked. Site plan review came in, oh, there's some issues, you need to address these.
Yeah.
They were more than Aaron could handle, they brought in the fire marshal's office to take, you know, do the inspection. Great, this is how
I
this
don't
works.
think Lauren would have considered it a win.
Doesn't matter.
So we're not trying to serve Lauren.
No.
We're trying to serve the town.
Isn't he
Yeah,
a
we're
resident of?
serving the town.
Yes, but we're trying-
He's a resident of the town.
Yeah, but we're serving the town, not the individual.
Right,
Well,
it's
the
not-
issue was, could he have been better informed about what might happen by better definitions?
Yeah,
You know,
And could he have somehow avoided it? Found a strategy which allowed him to avoid it?
Well,
Well, no, he couldn't avoid it, because
I
he had
don't-
to meet the state.
yeah, I think Tim's right. I think that it would have been good if we'd been tuned up on this and said, you know, are you safe? Are you gonna, is your fire safety in place? Maybe we did, maybe, I mean, I guess we got some kind of, anyway, our instincts now are tuned up so that when somebody comes in, they ask this, what about fire safety? Let's actually have Aaron or somebody go and be sure about it. I don't think ever had a notion of, I mean, I think to Dave's point, this is a win. I don't think we ever had a notion of shutting him down. We wanna make it, he's housing a whole flock of people that are doing useful work.
Well, we wouldn't have shut him down, he would have shut himself down. He couldn't afford it, but he did.
I mean, right, I mean, that's right.
But he could have just as easily said, I'll close everything and I'll try my best to sell it and I'll get the hell out of Dodge.
You mean because he couldn't afford?
Because he couldn't afford to do
Well,
what was
But
being
that's
asked.
a different, that's not the planning board's job. The planning
No,
board,
it's not, but that's what could have happened.
and.
I'm just saying, it
and that
wasn't
would've been
destined
regrettable.
necessarily to come out rosy.
And-
It was sort of a gamble.
But
But,
I
or not a
would-
gamble, but. it
Would
was-
you rather have an unsafe building that people are living
No.
in, or have something like that shut down because the owner doesn't have the funding? You know, it's not, again, the planning board is serving not only the resident, but
The
all
land-
the guests.
not only-
All I know is somehow he got the idea that he was something that he turned out not to be.
In the eyes of the state.
And-
In the eyes of the state.
All right?
But not up through the planning, but the planning, he falls under lodging and accommodations and still falls under lodging and that is not changed, there's no difference, from before he came to site plan to review to now.
Okay,
In the eyes of the
okay,
zoning.
if you wanna say it that way and just sort of dismiss any potential, culpability, just by dealing it off to the state and just
Well, no,
saying, hey, look, the
doesn't-
state disagrees with us and
No,
so
the
we
state
can't do
doesn't-
anything about that.
No, the
and,
state
you know,
doesn't disagree with us, the state again, they have their little boxes,
Right,
and our
right.
boxes and their boxes
So
are different,
is-
so the
is-
state has their own.
So is there any obligation or any sense of responsibility that we should try and close that gap? Just to
That's-
protect people?
But we have, you know, the state came in, said, there are deficiencies. The planning board has said, we will not allow the
So
modifications.
you're saying this is the process of closing the gap, is by
Yeah.
lowering the hammer?
Because he couldn't occupy it until
Right,
we meant it. See, the other thing, I think that too, is that if they had a fire and somebody died in there, okay, there'd be all kinds of lawsuits, and unfortunately, I think the town could be responsible, because they would come back, the attorneys would come back and say, well, you allowed this building to be unsafe with your zoning and all this stuff, so the town is responsible for this.
Right,
So
right,
that's the big, that's the problem.
right.
That's why we have,
Really, Tim?
yeah.
I mean,
Oh, they would.
assuming, if there were a fire now and he weren't good with the fire marshal, that strikes me as a problem. If the fire marshal is good with what he's got,
Oh, yeah, if the
I mean,
fire
we-
marshal's good with it.
we're absolved.
But I'm saying
Yeah.
before he fixed all this, if there'd been a fire and
2 years
somebody
ago,
died, yeah,
yes.
yeah, and then they would come back and say to the town, well, you allowed this.
yeah, you allowed an
Me.
expansion knowing that there were
Possibly.
deficiencies.
Right, and that's what I mean.
You know, the deficiencies came out during your site plan review, and you said, well, we're not gonna worry about that, we'll let.
Well, but they weren't defined deficiencies at that
Huh?
time. There was no defined deficiency at that time. So we,
It
it would
wasn't-
all be retrospective. In other words, you can't say that the fire marshal would have said this
Yeah.
had he inspected it before the fire. And so therefore,
No,
you are,
No,
the
the-
town is liable,
No,
so
they wouldn't.
it didn't
Well-
exist. If the violation if the fire marshal has not seen it and called it a violation, then there's no violation.
Right, but what,
So we're still absolved.
yeah, but what,
Our issue would be is if, the planning board went through site plan review, there were some deficiencies that were uncovered during the
Yeah.
site plan. And if the board had approved the increase, the basement apartment, or not apartment, but living space, and somebody passed away in that living space during a fire, and the town had not said, can't have that until those deficiencies are taken care of.
If we had identified deficiencies.
Right. Which
Right.
there were. The fire marshal identified deficiencies, because. site
Prior to
plan-
that, though.
Right, but the planning board's decision was you can't have that,
Right,
you can't occupy that space until,
right.
until
until all those issues are resolved.
Right, until our fire department looks at it, right?
Until the fire marshal signs off on it.
But actually, he didn't have to move anybody out. The issues were throughout the building.
Yes.
And yet, he didn't have to move anybody out, he just couldn't add to the catastrophe.
Okay, but the planning board can't, the fire marshal could have said, nope, you can't occupy these areas if the deficiencies were bad enough. And so they're the ones that would have that jurisdiction. The planning board doesn't have the jurisdiction to say, well, we think these are terrible deficiencies, so we're going to not let you occupy the building. We can't, the board doesn't have that authority.
Right, but I think though, that if somebody died in there and the fire marshal had said, you don't have to, get out before we finish, you fix this stuff. The attorneys of the relatives, of the person that died would have gone after everybody, they
Well,
would have said.
the attorneys are gonna go after who has the deepest pockets, period. That's,
Right,
Yeah.
so, and you're not going to prevent that. That's going to be there first.
right, because they're gonna say, well, you should have not let anybody live
Right,
here.
well, you have the deepest pockets, so we're gonna sue you first because, he's lost all his assets in the fire, so he's got nothing other than a little bit of insurance money. We want more than that.
Right,
So we'll go after the town because they have more insurance.
right,
So your point is that this is a system, and this is an example of the system working.
Yes, it may not be perfect, but it does.
Well, it's perfect for what it's designed to do.
So, what do we want to do with this table here?
Yeah, yeah.
And,
I mean, I don't know, I was just asked to produce it, so
Yeah.
I don't.
I think you need to go through all the types of transient housing. And first of all, see, is it something that really has an issue for the town? You know, somebody who has an Airbnb who lets someone come in and stay for a weekend and they move out, or they have rooms that you can stay in for a weekend during, you know, a big college event. Is that an issue? And is it something that needs to be addressed? And go through each one of these types of housing options and say, is it something that needs to be addressed in town? Is there something that's causing a problem?
But if it doesn't exist in town, how about that?
Or if it doesn't exist in town? Well, you need to at least think about it,
I mean, there is no Motel 6 in town.
and that's something that,
Right, but you have to assume that it's gonna be there.
right, assume that it's, you
You
know,
have to
look at each
assume that
one
it's
and,
there.
but, you know,
So what do we do about that?
Yeah.
Maybe the whole thing is, we should just start suggesting these hyperbolic situations and say, okay, what do we think the
Let's say-
residents of Lyme would think about this?
they're gonna put a Motel 6 behind the pond in Pondview.
Okay,
You know, is that,
There's probably enough space back there.
oh, there's absolutely enough space back there.
Yep. Yeah,
They're gonna subdivide the Pondview off.
except those poor people that just bought that lot, but that's a different problem. Yeah,
well, the Pondview is commercial district,
Yeah,
right?
it's commercial.
Okay, so that means that the precedent problem is limited only to the commercial district, if we say, okay. So, you know, then the question is, you know, there is some residential presence there, what are they gonna think? Probably not gonna be crazy about the idea,
But,
because
you know,
it's gonna bring in an element that's not,
But they, you know,
it's a little
so the
unpredictable.
planning board says, all right, part of site plan review, and it's already part of site plan review screening. So we want them to screen the properties to the north so that they won't see lights from the parking lot, they won't see, you know, you have to have all downcast lighting. You not gonna have, you know, exterior lighting, you know, make sure that you shut your sign down at a certain time at night so that it's not bothering the neighbors. You know, is that, you know, okay, but that's,
Yeah, I mean, I suppose under those circumstances, it's not completely unreasonable.
and so that's the type, you go through all of those options and say, is this something?
But
that-
let's change the location of that Motel 6.
Absolutely.
Let's
Dorchester Road.
put it on Rich's property, right across from Post Pond.
There's a, you know, good,
It's on
as far as I know, there's still a lodging organization
Right,
there.
but let's call it a Motel 6, and,
Mhm.
you know, and everything that comes with that.
Well,
What
let's say-
about
Let's
that?
say up by Reservoir Pond.
wouldn't be allowed out by Reservoir Pond, because it's, if you look at the zoning currently, it doesn't, you're in the mountain
That's like-
forest.
Oh,
There's
well,
not-
well,
let's say
the road-
High Bridge
So-
Road, High Bridge.
Yeah, somewhere in the road district that's
Yeah,
way
okay.
out.
So High Bridge,
Right,
great place.
Got a nice view.
Yeah, you can get that beautiful views.
Well, and, so, I mean, one of the things that you have to season this discussion with the practicalities that, nobody could find High Bridge. It was, you know, years before I even knew High Bridge existed, so if you actually tried to put a Motel 6, that would not be a place where an actual person would try to sightline. I was gonna change the subject a little bit. You asked a really interesting question, Rich, which was, what are we gonna do with this? And one of the things that I think we can do with our time is invite the zoning board in to fill in the second half of that agenda item. Bill Malcolm buttonholed me on the budget committee a couple
Yeah.
months ago and said, I these guys ever gonna talk to us? And so I think we ought to talk to them.
I think
We-
we talked
yeah,
about,
we
Yeah, you
talked
weren't
about
here,
that
Rich,
last
but I
week.
had a
Yeah,
long
last
talk,
week.
I talked to, Bill
Did you?
Malcolm came over to our house a
Okay.
couple weeks ago for
Yeah, yeah.
something else, he was like, and he and I talked for an hour and a half. And, you know, the whole thing about how the planning board had, in his opinion, which I think is true, we had basically said to you, to the ZBA, you guys are third-class citizens, we don't care about you. And, you know, and that's what, you know, I don't totally disagree. So we kind of blew it. So I said to Bill that I will really bring it up with the planning board and try to see about having a joint meeting and all that. And then he said, well, that's great, but he would like, before we had the meeting, he would like to have some definite things to talk about, you know, specific
Okay.
things in the
so,
zone to talk about,
let
which
me
makes sense.
kind of bring everyone
Oh,
up
you
to
happen to
speed,
know
'cause
about that too, don't you?
this is, we're, so, first of all, we have election coming up
Yes.
early next month. Tim, you're not going, you're not running, so you're not gonna be on the board, we have a new member in your place. So I think it'd be unfair to a new member to, you know, start something and then kind of throw them in. The other thing is, the zoning board right now has pretty much all new members except for Bill. And many of
Who are
them.
they?
Okay, so you have, you gotta bear with me, cause names, I lose them very easily.
Aaron Mancuso.
Aaron Mancuso, Tom Toner,
Mhm.
Zoe Washburn, and,
Yes. Is it Helen Whitty?
Helen Whitty is no longer on the board.
That's right.
She had
Um,
kids, so she, you know.
That's right.
Robin Spencer, she is Christine Brown's granddaughter. She's the one that's building the new ADU.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's a member.
So she's Matt's niece.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, other than Bill Malcolm,
That's a pretty new board.
it's a very new board. Robin just joined in January, Tom Toner last fall. Aaron Mancuso's been around about a year, Zoe Washburn about 2 years. So, they haven't hit a lot of the issues. So what we're doing is Frank Bowles, who used to be the chairman, I passed out to everyone, I've sent it to the board multiple times. But
2 years ago, I think he first did it.
yeah. But he sent a good list of things that the board, so I'm going to bring that list back to the zoning board of adjustment, let them look it over, talk about it. I'm gonna bring up some of the other issues that I have,
Yeah.
that I know the board has issues with. And then they will at least have some familiarity with some of the things that, issues that, then they can come to the board and talk. Cause I think the new members, because they haven't seen any of this yet, they would kind of be lost.
Right.
And I don't, you know, I would like to,
Right, and just to reiterate, and as my parting, I just think it's really important to have the planning board and the ZBA work together, you know, and all, and we haven't for a long time, and it's unfortunate, really. And so, and I think, you know, with all these new members on the ZBA, it would be great to meet with the planning board, and they could learn a lot, you know, they'll just learn a lot.
yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah, so
I
hopefully you
absolutely-
guys
so-
will do that, yeah.
I'm hoping to probably schedule something April.
Great.
I think that would be give the, because they only meet once a month, so.
Yeah, and they may have to come to a special meeting, you know, for them, it may not be a regular meeting for them, they might have to do an extra meeting.
Right, well, I'll try to schedule it on a planning board night to have them come.
Yeah.
Right, and they'll have to do an extra meeting. but-
And March is really, I mean, for our new board member here, I mean, that's, you know, that's
Mhm.
2 meetings from now.
Right, so yeah, so
So
it's.
maybe we wanna push that off until April or something, I'm not sure.
You know, so I
Because
think
it seems like
April
we
would be
might
great.
wanna have some discussions, you know, I pulled out Frank Bowles' thing and, you know, it's from 10 years ago.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
And like I said-
And I'm surprised that, you know, my predecessors here didn't have any conversation with the zoning board?
no, and it was an oversight, I mean, we looked at that, I think, with Frank's list, and a lot of it we said, well, you know, there's not really a problem with this, we were fine with this, and then the few things that we thought maybe was a problem, we kinda let go, and it was a big oversight that we never got back to the ZBA. We should have said, gotten back to them and said, hey, we looked at this, and this is what we think, and whatever, but we never did, so they thought we were just blowing them off, which we did. Unfortunately.
Because I mean, what his memo says is, this is a follow-up for the discussion of a joint meeting of the two boards on March 24th, 10 years ago.
Yep.
But I don't think we met, though, did we? I don't think we had a joint meeting.
I don't recall.
I don't think we
It's
did.
10 years ago.
I know, but
I don't know, I just happened to notice that when I'm.
Well, whatever, it didn't happen, it was an oversight, and now we can fix it, I think.
Yeah. So we seem to be kind of spinning around in circles here. I mean, I think that, you know, what Nat has done here, I think is good information, and then I really think, you know, we need to start to think about, you know, in my mind, it's the size of, the potential size of some of these uses that just wouldn't fit into the character of, you know, or the residential.
Well, it's also the
So,
road.
so
we have to
would you
make
say that then the point would be to, you know, lodging and accommodation is really only one line here, okay? Would you say that the point would be to divvy up lodging and accommodations and parse this one line accordingly based on, I don't know, a committee discussion of each item and whether or not we think it should be a conditional yes, a yes, or a no for the different districts?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is as succinct a point as I can put on this.
Yeah.
So
is that
where we should be going?
I tend to think so, yeah.
Now, you mean to go through the list, like campground, inn, hotel, bed and breakfast?
I mean, not
Or what's the
necessarily
law?
every single one of them, but to try and figure out a rational way of divvying them up so that we can address, how the different types of lodging and accommodations would impact the permissibility in each of the various districts.
So what if you add them to the list?
Well, you could add them all
Just-
to the
yes,
list
I
and then
think-
parse them all.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just like, then lodging and accommodations becomes larger than the whole rest of the list
Right,
as
well-
a use. So you
Yeah.
could, or you could do a separate table like I did and just go through them one by one. And, I mean, it's saying the same thing, that ultimately what you wanna do is try and
Decide
figure
where
out
you
which
want
which ones you think the town wants and which ones they don't, and
And where?
where,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And then, and whether transient comes into it, I think transient does come into it, because I think that's what the town, I think one of the things that you would, if you were a resident and that were going in next door to you, one of the questions you would ask are there transient people here or are there permanent people here? Because that's, you know, it's conceivably a different element.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I think
or-
the transient thing is good, but it's only a guideline, because I don't think there are ways to hold anybody to what they initially propose. So it's, you know, it's just a way of characterizing the thing.
But it's also just an enforcement issue that, you know, if you're, say, you know, you characterize this place as less than 30 days, and they have a few people that decide they wanna stay, you know, like campground. You know, there's a good example, in the summertime, you have people who are working in an area for 2 or 3 months. They'll come, bring their camper, park it in a campground for 2 or 3 months, and live out of their camper. that's a very common thing.
So what do you do about that?
Right, and so are you going to have the campground give, receipts every month to prove that,
Yeah, it gets crazy.
yeah, it's, that's one of my concerns with the defining something that, then you have to try to enforce that definition, and some of these things are,
But that's, if you say nothing is enforceable, then
no,
there's
I'm
no
not saying
point.
nothing is enforceable, what I'm saying is that there are, you have to make, if you're going to create a rule, you need to create a mechanism for that enforcement.
And so you're saying that the transient, non-transient is a rule that that is almost impossible to enforce,
Unless,
because you don't have a way of keeping the records.
right, without, so you.
And in fact, some communities do have ways, like Hanover, as Vicky was saying last week.
Yes, and they also have staff.
They register everybody who stays overnight in Hanover, right?
Right.
They're all on a big
They've got the
list.
people, they got more people to do it.
Yeah, I don't know how Hanover handles,
Right,
but,
right.
and again, the question is, someone staying longer than this arbitrary number that you've come up with, is that a problem?
It's only a problem, it's a problem.
It's only a problem
if it
if
creates a problem.
somebody feels it's a problem.
Yeah.
Right, again, the idea of, a construction worker staying in a camper during the summer, working on a construction project,
Right.
as long as they're not creating a nuisance, is there a problem with that?
Yeah, probably not.
Right,
Uh,
right.
That's,
But there are probabilities of nuisance that
There
we
always-
can probably bank on.
you have
And we probably should bank on.
you have a house that's being rented out for weekends, that, you have people coming in and they bring in 16 cars that can only, driveway can fit 4. And so they're parking all over the street, they're parking all over the lawn, that's, becomes an issue, and that's something that you can see and enforce. Somebody staying.
All right, so, right, but you can't tell them that they, but the people who have parties every weekend are students, okay? But you're saying that you have to let them rent to students until it happens, and then you say, oops, I guess we shouldn't have rented to students?
No, your mechanism is that, through site plan review, you say, this is the number of parking spaces that you have defined.
Right.
And you are renting to a larger number than what you have defined that you have.
But when you have a party, you're not renting, they're just guests, they're coming, but they gotta have a place to park.
They have to have a place to park.
Right,
And so you've exceeded that, so through, you're in violation of your site plan because you are having more vehicles on your site than
Right.
you have stated that you have.
And somebody-
okay, so you're saying the problem has to happen before we can react to it, we
Well, somebody has to
we can't see it coming.
Well, no, you see it coming because in site plan review, you've said, oh, look, you only have this much room for parking. So you've seen the problem, and you said, okay, we know how many parking spaces you have. And all of a sudden, there's an overflow, and there's overflow multiple times, the police get called, then I talk to the police and deal with issues with the police. And I look back and say, oh, they had, the police have come back to me, because I'm not here on weekends, and said they had 16 cars at this one residence. I look back at the site plan and say, oh, the site plan says you have parking for 6. Then they get a notice saying you're in violation of the site plan, your site plan, because you have more, and we have a way of enforcing it.
Right. And they-
Where you have, you know, let's say, we'll go back to the campground example, somebody stays more than 30 days, technically, the campground is in violation, because it says transient housing no more than 30 days. If there is a problem, a documented problem, you know, police are being called because of something, then we have a way of going back and saying, oh, transient housing.
Because it all comes down to whether somebody complains. Right?
It really, it
In other words,
does.
you could, those kids could have a party, you know, every other week for a long time with 16 cars there, and if nobody ever complained, we probably wouldn't know about it, and so, and it would be
Right,
bad.
if, you know.
But as soon as they, so it all comes down to whether somebody really complains about it, you know, that's how it comes down.
So your view would be, everything is site plan review, conditional yes,
Well, as
for
David-
any kind of accommodation anywhere
Well,
in the
no,
town?
as David said, we'd have the site plan review law, whatever, the regulation.
But
We have
this-
it there, and then it.
You'd have the reg there, but they're gonna have they're gonna build it, they're gonna occupy it, they're gonna rent it, and they're gonna have guests before somebody's in violation of their site plan review. All of that's gonna happen. In other words, we're not gonna prevent anybody from building it with a site plan review violation, because that's not gonna happen until it already exists.
Right,
Right,
that's,
so basically, everything has got a conditional yes, and they're not gonna say, oh, but we're gonna have guests and we're gonna overflow, so we can't do this. They're not gonna say that.
No, but when they go through site plan review, we would say how many parking spots are
Right.
there.
Right.
And we'd say, this is the number you can have.
Right.
And then, unless somebody complains, we probably would never know if they had more cars there. But if somebody complained, then we would have the ability, because of the site, as David said, because of the site plan review, to enforce it and say, no, you can't do this.
Right.
But you can have
We
the
would say,
use,
no,
but
you
you-
can't do this, but they continue to have the use. And we didn't prevent the use in the first place.
You mean the 16 cars?
Well,
No, no,
yeah, or the, you know, I mean, the 16 cars, you know, and, you know, it's hard to predict who's gonna do that. I just threw out students as
Right.
a likely group that would, but, you know, I think there are other things that are, you know, like a methadone site, okay? You know, a methadone distribution site, okay? That's gonna bring in a certain group of people, particularly without a clear transit around here. It's going to bring in a population of people that are going to be
But-
difficult for the community to contend with. It's
Right, but they're
predictable.
not gonna get site
It's-
plan review.
It's, pardon me?
Oh, methadone, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking about meth.
Meth
That's
house.
different. I did crack house, no, I'm sorry, methadone, a methadone facility.
Right,
It's a medical facility,
right.
I think, and
And they hand out method, yeah.
I'm looking here.
But Matt, I would contend that.
I'm
I think
just
we'll
saying,
say
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
there are certain predictable things
Right.
where something should have a no instead of
Oh,
a yes,
yeah.
okay? And
Absolutely.
David is saying, no, everything should have a conditional
No,
yes.
that's not, that is
And
not what I've
because-
said.
I don't think
That is
what-
not what I've said.
Okay, well then what did you say?
That the board needs to go through these and decide.
Well,
what
we
it-
got that, that's what the process is. Right.
What we will accept.
Yes, and there may very well be things that the town, and it's not the board's decision, it's the
Right,
town's.
but right.
Says, no, we don't want
We
that.
know how to get the town's opinion,
Yeah,
don't we?
Right.
yeah,
But I would contend, I bet you in Hanover, you know, Hanover has all these rules, but I'll bet that many, many times they're not gone by, you know, the rules are
Well, now
not
let me ask you
followed.
this.
And
Have
you
you ever
never know.
driven your vehicle at an excess of the speed limit?
No.
No, you've never,
Good on you.
I did once.
Yeah, I did once.
Okay, you did once. I know, we're recording this, and if you say yes, I'm gonna show it to Tony. But
He's the only one who knows.
it's public record now. You know, the rules are in place, and there are going to be people who violate them. That is human nature, and you can't, but that's why, you know, you have things in place to try to catch those and stop them.
Right.
You know, it's
You have a
not.
way to stop it.
But,
But there's no-
but let's just take the road analogy a step further. Are tractor trailer trucks allowed to drive? Yeah, I guess they are, actually, now that I think about it.
You know, the only way you're gonna stop
Probably.
speeding is to just not have cars.
Yeah,
And so the same thing would apply to the zoning. The only way you're going to stop problems is to not allow it in the zoning.
are there roads in Lyme where tractor trailer trucks are not allowed by
No.
law?
It,
No road.
no road.
They
Although
can post
starting
it.
on the 4th, they would not be allowed on the
They're
roads.
posted
They're
for the
posted.
spring, yeah.
For mud season, the
No
roads are
heavy-
posted.
Okay, so there are some rules where there's a no.
Yes,
Why don't you just let them drive, get stuck, and then say, you shouldn't have done that? And, you know, by site plan review, we're gonna take away your privilege to drive, or
Well,
something,
you
something
don't-
We can't do
equally
that. We can't do
pointless.
that.
I'm just saying, you did something preventative by saying, no, you can't drive on this road, okay, during these months. And that's what I'm saying we would do with these various accommodations. There's such a high likelihood of problems
Yeah.
that we don't wanna wait for the site plan review process to play out.
I have no
And
issues with this.
we just wanna prevent
Yeah,
a
no,
predictable issue.
You know, I agree,
Okay.
that's.
Well,
that's
don't you
right.
think there's more than just predictable issues? Don't you think it's, you know, a sense of the neighborhood and the aesthetics? and,
That's an issue.
Right.
And so for those reasons, some or many of these, in my mind, wouldn't be applicable in some of the zones that we allow right now.
Right,
I think,
but when
we don't have
remembering
hard
that that's-
criteria for that, but I agree that those would be issues.
I think the roads are
And,
a big
and,
issue.
and it would have to be, and it's predictable that there would be people who were offended
Yeah.
by certain
I
structures.
mean,
Well, the
that's the
roads are
whole
a big
thing
issue.
about zoning is you get some predictability, you know, people decide to buy and build or whatever based on, I mean, that's theoretically one of the important tenets of zoning is that you can rely on
Right.
what your neighborhood's gonna look like.
Let's take the Motel 6 on High Bridge and modify that a little bit, and instead of a Motel 6, somebody is going to put a fancy inn.
Right,
That is something that would be more likely to be found.
right.
Right.
But depending on how many rooms are in that inn, would the roads be able to handle it?
Well, that's-
Or
that's-
does the town have to build this, you know, spend all this money on the road, and do people want some major highway out
Well,
there?
that, again, that's
the whole
where,
thing, you know,
you know,
yeah.
the no comes in, saying, wait a minute, you know, having a inn that's going to
30
be.
room, a 30-room
A
inn.
30-room inn,
The traffic is gonna be.
On High Bridge probably wouldn't be appropriate,
right, and so.
but
you
a
know,
10-room inn might be.
Yep,
Well,
um,
maybe.
Or a bed and breakfast with, you know, 3 rooms to rent, that might be.
yep, and that's the,
Yeah, but I guess we get off on this with whether or not transient would ever play into a no. Isn't that where we got off on this?
Everybody would know.
In other words, if someone had predominantly transient versus non-transient, would that ever play into a no
Well, I
for a
think just-
certain thing?
I think as we were just saying, if it was a big, not a lot of rooms, and it was.
If it was an inn on High Bridge as
Yeah.
opposed to an apartment house, where people actually had
Well,
residences.
apartment house at the
It
moment,
really
you-
depends on how many people you're bringing in, and whether the road can, whether the town.
It's a
can
30
handle the road.
room, 30 room inn, 30 apartments.
Yeah, it's too much for High Bridge Road, because you'd have too much traffic, and the town would have to spend lots of money and on the road, and do the people want, you know, to live out there and use that road, do they want a major road out there, you know, all
had
that.
60 cars a day
Yeah,
going up High Bridge.
Well, to me, like a 10 room inn, I suppose, on High Bridge would not be horrible. But a 10 room apartment building would, or a 10 apartment, you know,
But-
same cars, same number of cars.
Well, because it's
Uh,
fully occupied 7 days a week, 24/7, as opposed to an inn that's got off times and, you know.
Well, that's
got
true, but-
vacancies and stuff.
You-
Just remember, you're not going to get a 10 apartment, because you can't build that under the current zoning.
Right.
So that's already, you know.
That's already a no.
yeah.
Well, I guess, you know, that's, at any rate, that's a way forward with this.
Yeah.
Is to just sort of make it a blow up of this one line in this table and say, you know, refer to table 4.1.2.
Right.
And for lodging and accommodations and, you know, the uses in the different districts.
Yeah.
And
Make it-
so,
make it more
but I think we
specific.
probably all have to talk about them one by one and go through site plan criteria and, just as
Different
a dry
scenario.
run.
Yeah, different
uh,
scenarios, yeah.
And different scenarios and then make a judgment on each one of them. So it would be a long process. Is that a reasonable answer to all of your questions too? Like, why did you do this? What was the point?
I'm disagreeing with your answer, but I
Okay.
guess,
So you don't think it's reasonable?
I don't think it's useful, no, I mean, so in fact, one of the things, I was thinking about it, you know, transient, people that show up, stay a night or two and go away, it strikes me those are the least desirable neighbors, people in the neighborhood, because you don't know who they are, they don't share any values with you. The people that are here for weeks or, you know, half a year, that strikes me as probably
Yeah, I
somebody
actually
that's
didn't make
fine.
a value judgment on transient,
Yeah.
one way or the other, or
Well-
the offensiveness of it, but I just said that it would mean a different element. And some people would think that was
Right,
different.
but I mean,
It would be,
lodging is permitted, it's straight out permitted, I mean, it's site plan review, but, it is
But-
clearly allowed.
but the issue is, should all types of lodging be permitted? And if you can think of some type of lodging that shouldn't be permitted somewhere, then shouldn't you divide it all up like this and then try and go through each one and decide what we think should be permitted where?
I guess I see two things. I think you could do that. I think you would spend an enormous amount of time on definitions, because I betcha somebody that was clever could tear your definition apart and say, oh, no, we're not that, we're this. And so I see a lot of work to get that done. And I go back to my original question. I'm not sure what the problem is. We're not seeing an influx of people doing lodging. And so I think, I guess, I will personally say, I'm very comfortable saying lodging and accommodations, you gotta get site plan review. Our discriminators are tuned right up. It's like, what are you gonna do for fire? You know, and they gotta get not just a letter from the fire chief saying, oh yeah, it's fine. And I think that it gets it off our table, because we're not the experts. And so that's my sense.
My own feeling is that on my road, I don't wanna see a hotel. And I would hope that I can convince other people of that.
And,
Okay,
but
I don't wanna see a hotel, I don't wanna see a rooming house, I certainly don't wanna see a methadone, halfway house.
Right.
I think there are no's out there. I think there are obvious no's. And you're right, they haven't happened yet. So,
But we have to.
do we
assume-
wait until do we wait until one, I mean, that's David's solution, everybody said yes, and.
You're not taking what I said
No,
correctly.
David's not saying
No,
that.
no,
Well,
so,
But that's what you're saying, you're saying everybody's a yes, as long as they get through site plan review and they can have it.
so
And
I think,
I think there should be no's.
I think you're,
Isn't that what we're
Yeah,
for?
no,
Isn't that what
no.
we're?
Yeah,
because that-
absolutely.
That's what we're here for.
Well, that's what good
ignoring-
planning is. In other words, we're
Yeah,
saying
that's
we're
what the
planning
planning-
the town so that
Exactly.
there isn't all of a sudden a huge expense to the town and all this, that happens. That's what the planning is, right?
okay, so I think the planning board also needs to consider the economics of various proposals. I think the notion that Walmart is just waiting at the border to come in is just wrong. We don't have town water, we don't have town sewer, we don't have three-phase power, we don't have any of those things that would allow them to come in. They would have to put all that infrastructure in. They're not gonna. I don't think, to use your example, I don't think a methadone clinic is gonna wanna be any place but on Route 10. How are you gonna find, I mean, as a practical matter, how are your customers gonna find it?
Yeah,
And so I think to say, let's build up this huge set of rules for something that's not actually practically, economically feasible is not a good use of our time.
what's his, is it Bill who wrote Bill Malcolm?
Bill Malcolm.
Yeah, did he not include housing and accommodations on his letter? I think he did.
On Frank Bowles' letter, you mean?
Or the original letter.
Yeah, that was
of-
Frank Bowles. He was
There was
the
a
chairman.
long list of things, and I think that there was, I think that was
remember.
one
It
of
could have
them,
been,
maybe it wasn't.
I can't
He's
remember.
got something about plan development.
Yeah, but this, as we said, this was like 8 or 10 years ago. it's
So
hard.
maybe it's a non-issue then, I don't know.
Yeah, but see, I think the thing is, we have to plan for the future too. We can't just say, well, this isn't gonna happen in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. We have to say, well,
Well,
what
I
does
think
the
it's
town
a-
look like in 30 years, when it is feasible to bring in all this, maybe.
I think it would be a good exercise to go through every single one of the types of housing that you have listed, because it's a great list. And consider, is that something that should be addressed in the zoning? You go through each one of the, boarding and rooming house. Is that something that would benefit the town, hurt the town, is something that should be addressed by the zoning or fall under the transient housing? And, especially when you get down into the lodging, the bed and breakfast, hostel, hotel inn, those are things that very easily could happen. When you look at some of the, like the hosted, where, basically bed and breakfast, or Airbnb style. There are, some towns who are absolutely having issues with that. And Canaan, I just talked to their zoning administrator, or one of their planning board people last week. They made the mistake of thinking that we were Lyme, Connecticut, not Lyme, Vermont, or not Lyme, New Hampshire, but
Close enough.
they were looking at the ordinance from Lyme, Connecticut.
Oh,
But they're having some issues with Airbnbs.
In Canaan,
Yes.
interesting. We
what
had
kind
a
of issue
discussion.
was it?
We didn't get into,
Oh.
because he was trying to ask me about our ordinance, and I'm like, well, we don't have one. He's, I'm looking at it. And then
Nantucket
he was
just
rather
passed.
embarrassed about,
The other line.
Nantucket just passed a law
So-
that if you do long-term rental in New Hampshire, in Nantucket, they give you a benefit, you get some extra benefit off your taxes or whatever, because they're having so many short-term rentals in Nantucket, that there's nothing left.
Nothing left for the people,
For the
the
people that
workers.
live there, so they're giving this, you know, to people that rent long-term.
Yeah, my sister gets a huge tax benefit in Washington DC because their house is owner occupied,
Interesting, interesting.
and that's DC.
Wow.
Hmm.
I was gonna ask you a question. We had a discussion about short-term rentals here.
A year or so ago, yeah.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, there was one about 5 or 7 years ago, where I think we decided that this is not a problem, that short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs, that kind of stuff is just an accessory use.
Yep, and that was, at that time, that was the decision, and
And
absolutely something that should be revisited periodically.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember
As
that.
with anything, because, you know, if something's becoming an issue, then it should at least be.
Yeah, I remember, Rich, when we talked about that, I think I looked up to see how many Airbnbs there were in Lyme, and it was surprising how many, which we didn't even, I didn't know about.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't causing a problem, but there
Well,
were just a
exactly.
lot more people that were doing Airbnbs in Lyme than we ever realized.
I mean, the only problem I can see, well, you can obviously have obnoxious guests, but it seems like some of the, at least one of the places I'm aware of, would be a semi-affordable house, but now it's an Airbnb, you know, and so that house, that unit is out of the,
I was thinking about a place, south on Route 10 that could be converted to an affordable house, but it's a sugar house right now.
it's its highest and best use.
Yeah, it's, but yeah, you know, that is one of the issues that a lot of places, my sister has a rental property on Chincoteague Island in Virginia. And that's one of the big issues on the island, is that there's no place for residents to live anymore because people buy up all the.
But they're mostly in places where people go on vacation, I think. I mean, I don't see it being a big problem in Lyme in the future, because it's not like, you know, we're not next to a lake or an ocean or whatever, so they,
Yeah, the big thing I think is, you know, rentals for Dartmouth events.
yeah,
So the Lyme Inn is where they get their biggest,
right,
right.
Although they seem to, well, no, the other place seems to close right at graduation or something, I never figure that out, but.
And one of the other things I'm gonna throw out is just something for the board to think about when you're talking about, you know, transient versus, permanent housing is a mix. Because I think that was something that Liz had talked about, at least to me, with the inn, is mixing, some permanent residents with, and still keeping the inn partly as an inn.
So this is Dowd's?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that was something, you know, that I thought the board should at least think about, that
Do you know what their vacancy rate is?
I do not know.
You know, it's interesting, this is off the subject, but you might be interested. Several years ago, the Tuck School was thinking about buying Dow's Inn and turning it into housing for them, for like people coming in for lectures and all this stuff. Because the Hanover Inn is booked so solidly that they didn't really have the room, and they actually considered buying the Dow's Inn and then turning it into that for Tuck
So
School.
I bet Tammy wishes she'd sold it to
I
them.
know, well, they didn't, I don't know how serious, I mean, they were definitely considering it, I don't know how serious it got, but that was, it's interesting to see.
Does anybody know if there are guests at Dowd's right now? Overnight guests?
Yeah.
I believe there are, yes.
Hmm. Well, I think we should wrap it up, but can we get a consensus, or do we need to go through this discussion again? I think we should be looking at this table and deciding whether there's some Ns or Ys or SPRs that are misplaced or should be changed. And
Could I offer the suggestion that I go into some kind of subcommittee? I'm not sure it takes, you know, all 5 of us to sit around and talk about it, but to have some group of people meet.
How can the subcommittee work
Basically,
without having a public meeting?
it would be a public meeting. It would be a subcommittee, would be a working session.
Yeah,
You would have to keep minutes and.
But I mean, you could meet during the day,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
noticed,
Well, unless you,
But it'd have to be noticed, yes.
unless
of
you,
course noticed, but yes.
unless you wanna talk about it again when Vicky and David Connor here, you know, just to have another.
I mean, I'd like to maybe put on a homework list that, that we send something out after this meeting saying we would like to look at this table. And I mean, the other thing is, maybe we don't need all of these things on the table. If they're excluded, then that means they're not allowed,
Yes.
but then somebody will just try to fit their square peg into this round hole that, and say that it's something.
I would happily do it in phases, I think, probably. Maybe if you start with a whole list and put Ns and Ys and SPRs, and then look at what we decide on for the whole list. Then
Yeah.
you can decide, could we group this and this under this
Together,
thing?
yeah.
And shrink it. Because we feel the same about both of these entities.
Yeah, yeah.
Why don't we, if I put out to the board to, everyone go through this table, and I'll resend it out, and just decide which ones you believe should be no's. Although, it should be per district.
Right,
Yeah, so,
but it's
Yep.
divided, isn't that the way the table's broken down per district?
Yeah, it's all of the zoning districts.
It's the same way this table's broken down. I think.
It's on page 4 of 5.
oh, there we are, yes. Sorry, Yep, so I'll say the last 2 pages, go through and see if you agree, disagree, would like to change,
Yeah,
and then, at the next meeting, I'll talk about grouping.
Right, right. I think I'd sign on to that.
And do we need to understand what the criteria are in the site plan review for each of these? Obviously, a criteria for campground would be different from a hotel or a hostel, you know.
But we only have one set of criteria for site plan review of an accommodation,
But
right?
if
Well,
we-
it's one site plan review period.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't really have any set of criteria.
And that's very true, you know, campground, let's say it's a campground that's not gonna run in the wintertime, then the snow storage is not a problem.
Well,
So
right, no, we can certainly waive
Yeah,
that,
waive things, but-
you know, I mean, a campground is gonna have, you know, a shower shack and a hot tub or something, I don't know, and then a ginormous parking lot, where, you know, a hotel or an inn is gonna be very different. I mean, maybe our site plan review regs cover it.
I tend to think they would.
I think they would cover most of it, I mean, there's a few different things. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
It's pertinent to the use that we're trying to permit. It's not, I don't think our site plan review criteria are so specific that you can't review a hotel or a solar farm. I mean, they apply to both.
Yeah, there are certain rules that won't apply to some of them, those get waived.
Yeah,
Right.
But I think this would be an interesting exercise because we all have different points of view for how this should come out. And you, David, have even another point of view. It's better informed, but it's administrative.
Yeah.
So I think you should do it too.
Okay.
So, and then I think we should, I just think it would be great
Yeah.
to have everybody you know, I don't, I think it would be, I'm the one who created this thing, so it obviously tickles me to think that we would actually talk about it this much. But
Yeah,
I think it would be great to see how everybody thought about things. I would, you know, I think it'd be interesting.
Right. Yeah, David's
So-
point of view is, he's only looking at what the zoning says. He has no other
No,
dog in the fight, you know, he's saying,
Well,
no,
can I
he's,
administer it?
he's
That's what I
talking,
mean, yeah.
he has to work with the zoning board of adjustments. And so he has to administer it, and so there are certain
Right.
things that he probably doesn't wanna get into. And it's easy to do, just put an N. And it doesn't have to be, maybe his table will be all N's.
yeah, right, then his job will be a lot easier.
Well, actually, it'd be more yeses, because saying no is much more work
Yeah,
than saying, yeah, it is. It's far more work for me to say no, and people don't realize it,
You
they
actually
get mad
have
at
to
me.
compose a reason.
I have to have a reason, and I try very hard to work with people to say, okay, I have to say no, here's our options, so I have to
Right.
give them those options.
Right.
And,
You say no because it says right here in the zoning, no.
right, but it's still, it's
It's the only
going,
reason.
it's going to take me more work to say no than it will be to say
Right,
yes.
right. No, I.
right, that's
I
great,
agree.
that's a good idea. Rick.
Okay.
Right.
And
Well,
we will have some poor, new member at our next meeting
No.
too.
Oh, will we have a new member?
Yeah, Tim, this is Tim's last
This is
meeting
Tim's last
But-
meeting,
for 40 years,
When is the vote?
the 10th.
Ted,
and our meeting's the 12th.
Okay.
So we get her to sign the.
Yes, as long as they-
What's it, the affirmation?
The oath of office.
Oath of office, right.
Yes, and that's true, if he doesn't get in and sign the oath of office, although I think it would be fine to have him come and sit.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Maybe this is a topic we shouldn't have him in on the first meeting. He may say, the
Just
heck
throw
with
him in
this.
the deep end.
I'm just,
he may run out screaming.
yeah. A bunch of guys.
Yeah, what the
Ted,
hell am I getting into?
I wish you all the best.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a hard, right? Yeah, it's been, I figured out it was 40 years ago that I was first on the board.
So.
Yeah, you make that sound like it's been a
86.
slog for 40 years, but it was like, wasn't there like a 35-year hiatus or
Well, not
something?
quite that one, no, I wasn't on continuously, no, I would be crazy if I, except Vicky actually has, but,
Well, Vicky
I
lives for this stuff.
I
Yeah.
know, it's a thing. It's her business, yeah.
Huh. Well, I've accepted a motion to adjourn. Would you like to make that motion,
I'm
sir?
moving, we
A free,
Yeah.
a free accepted
So
vote,
moved.
all in favor?
All right.
All right.
It was Jordan's birthday.
Yesterday, yep.
Oh, nice.
Whose?
Happy birthday, George.
Happy
Yeah.
birthday, Jordan.
Sorry.
Okay, it is now 10 o'clock. I will open March 3rd Select Board meeting, and we begin with public comments. We have two public with us in-house. Anyone
Just
else? Not just Jordan.
Just Jordan. She's not public.
No. So, Rich.
I only wish all of you the strength to get through this week,
Thank you.
so.
And next week.
And next week, you're right.
Bill?
Tell me if this is not appropriate, but I came upon a study that I think the board may wish to know about 2025 by the New Hampshire Housing.
Okay.
That shows that we now generate 0.29 students per house. New construction, 0.4 students per individual home, and 0.06 students per condo unit. And that new housing built from 2014 to 23 yielded $1,711 positive unit for the local school districts. So some of the questions about, are we gonna flood the schools if we build some housing? Here's some data.
Okay, and that's statewide data.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. As always, each individual community will have different results, but that's
Of
good
course.
data to perhaps say, we're looking at some things not correctly. Okay, and Dina, we still have nobody else on board.
Correct.
Excellent, moving right along. We have minutes to review and approve from February 17th. What do we wish?
I'll second it.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Ben, and all those in favor say aye.
Then
David, aye. Judy, aye. Thank you. And then we have 1, 2, 3 manifests. We have one manifest in the amount of $399,229.04, of which $300,000 is a school payment. Then we have a second manifest for $500,000, which is a school manifest. And then we have a whopping $5,578 in the third manifest.
Right.
I'll move them.
Thank you, Ben.
I had one question.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember where it was. There was one thing on the big one, but I wasn't sure what it was.
$389.
And just so you know, the school is separate because it was a February payment, the balance that was due.
Okay.
And then this one, the 5578 is the grant for the dance mirrors.
Ah, okay.
So there's a $4,500 entry labeled repair fire hydrant accident.
Yes.
Oh.
I
yes.
couldn't let that go.
There was, no, there was a vehicle accident that damaged the fire hydrant.
Took it right out, pretty much.
And, yeah,
Where?
and right at Pondview Apartments, that
Oh.
pond, that fire hydrant. And so that's the repair of the fire hydrant, which we will collect in insurance money.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Then David,
okay.
Okay, I will second this, and David has said aye. Ben, you're in favor of the manifest?
Yes, I signed it.
Okay. And Judy, aye, so those are approved. Okay. We have 2 more
Uh-huh.
inspectors of election to be appointed. And I don't know that I saw the name.
Aaron Borgstrom
Okay.
and, is it Joseph
Oral.
Oral?
I
Yeah,
don't know him, but
yeah,
that's all
no,
right.
he's a newbie, or a newbie.
And Joseph somebody.
Oral, Horrell, I think it is.
Okay, what do we wish to do with those?
I'll move them.
Okay,
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Then
And Judy, aye. Those are approved. Thank you.
Judy, could you say their names again, please?
Karen Borgstrom
Karen, okay,
and Joseph Horrell.
okay.
So we have 17, 18, 19?
Yeah,
I think we've approved
Reappointed,
17 before.
yes, you did, I think.
So that makes 19. That
Yeah.
should be a big help.
Plus, there's a few that were already appointed from the last year, so, because it's every other year, and
Oh, okay,
so there'll be plenty, I think, for all of these meetings.
good. Yeah, it's gonna be a busy year.
Yep.
And we have the utility appraisal agreement, George Sansucci. We've already looked at this, and it has now been approved by town council.
Yes, it has been approved. David did have a couple of changes.
I don't think any of that should be very controversial or upsetting to the.
I don't either.
It's mostly where, like, he defines himself as Sansucci,
Right.
and then in the contract at various points, he
Says
says
us.
me or us, or,
Right, right.
and that's
And
not
then there were a
right.
couple of,
There's one place where he requires best efforts. Well,
Right.
legally, best efforts means you have to do everything
right,
humanly
Physically
possible
possible,
to
yeah.
accomplish it, and That's not what we mean here,
Yeah.
we want reasonable business
Right.
efforts.
I have, I sent that back to them already, and so they're looking at it and they'll, let us know, but I can't imagine. And as long as you guys will sign it when it comes back, okay? then-
Okay, so we are, have a consensus that it's been looked at by our council, board members, and we're waiting for them to say okay to the changes we made.
Right.
Okay. So that'll be coming up in the future. Okay, property searches before lien is placed. I think we have pretty much done this. It's the
This is the
Sanders
same
company.
company that you have an agreement with every year.
Given that the contract was for $350, I didn't have the heart to go in and mark it up.
Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, it's the same, and it actually has been looked at years ago by our council also, because it's the same one that
Such a
we
small amount of
kind of
money.
do, exactly.
And, you could always improve it, you could add cooperation provisions, but it's just a.
And I don't think we've ever had a problem with it.
No,
And this was something I was questioning. We are being asked to approve beginning the TAN
yes,
paperwork for 2026.
yeah,
I just questioned, it seemed early
it
to me.
is. Well, it's a little early, it's usually in April, but what happened last year was it was a tad bit later. And there was a big panic from Dina, and I really don't want the stress this year. And we're just starting the paperwork. The paperwork takes anywhere from 6 weeks to 7 weeks right in there to do anyways. So we're not borrowing any money now, we're not
That's good, because
getting any interest. I suspect that, well, I mean, the part of the issue is that we have, between now and April, no, between, yeah, anyways, we have limited funds, limited, $3.6 million in the bank, and, by the time we get to June, 3.7 of that goes to the school, so, I need the TAN to be ready to go. You don't have to do anything, or just sign, yeah.
If
just put
if
your
our
name
warrant
on it.
article passes so that we're collecting 2 times a year, it doesn't affect this year, right?
Correct, it's 27.
How far down does the bank balance get before the TAN typically kicks in, do you know?
Yes, we keep a very tight control on that. So, every day, 2 times a day, I'm checking the account and, it gets moved when it's absolutely necessary. And
So we're
sometimes,
just looking at this.
sometimes we make the school wait, or a couple people wait with bigger amounts until, another couple days go by so we can transfer and
But
we
you're not
all,
running down to like $10,000 in the bank or something.
probably at times it does get down to
Okay.
that, once
All right.
checks are cleared and
All right.
between transfers and stuff
Okay,
like that.
that gives us,
But, well, we have to keep, I think it's, oh God, I can't remember the figure, but anyways, it's close to 50,000 for the sweep account in there anyways, because,
Okay.
that's what they do, they
Yeah.
sweep it out,
okay, thank you.
so.
I want a sweep account.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And so when you get down and you wanna take something out of the TAN, do you look at what your expenses are gonna be for the next couple of months and?
No, I look at what my expenses are for the next few days, for the next manifest.
Okay, so you just take out small chunks from the TAN?
Exactly,
Okay.
because we only pay interest on what we're using.
All right, right.
So we could have $3 million sitting in the TAN ready to go,
Mhm, mhm.
and it's not costing us anything.
Right,
Once that money gets transferred, then it's costing us.
right.
And still the total cost of interest last year was
Was 55,
$55,000.
yeah. I know,
That's a big chunk of change.
it is a
Isn't
big
it?
chunk of change, but,
Yep, it would be. So, I don't know, I guess we can do this by consensus. We should start the TAN paperwork.
Fine, yeah.
yeah, you just have to make a motion to start the.
Oh, you want a motion?
I'll move
Yeah,
it,
'cause
I'll move it.
I have to give it to the bank, so.
You wanna see this, Dave?
And Ben,
Just-
you're gonna,
just start.
I'll second it. All those in favor of starting the TAN paperwork?
Yeah.
David,
Judy, aye. Okay, you've
Thank
got an
you.
approval there. David moved it and I seconded. Can't spell approved.
Yeah, I think it's our treasurer's least favorite time of year, because I'm always, you know, frantically trying to get a hold of her. You gotta move this, you gotta move that.
We have a report of wood cut, map 401 lot 48. Prilson, I think that's how you say that. Hughes Lane. Have you?
Dina, when I was driving over here, I noticed that there was a trailer on Powpond Lane right near that Klein Road with like a trailer that was loading up a bunch of cut logs. Do we know what that is?
It's probably an intent to have,
Okay, but we have paperwork on it.
I would think so. I can look and see, but generally people are really good about it, and they're trying to get all their logs out now before the road gets posted. They are posted, but before they get squishier,
Can't
and they can't go, right?
So in the dark of night,
Yeah,
they'll be
that's what
driving down
happens.
the street. I can hear them on Pinnacle.
It's when the roads are coldest, right?
If it's still frozen, they can still do that, but
Yeah.
Scott gives them permission, that's for
Yeah.
sure, but.
Remember, it was years ago, when somebody was logging out by Goose Pond Road, and they actually had the nerve to park a loaded log truck right by the intersection coming out to Route 10. Waiting
Wow,
to be gone.
today, yeah.
And everybody going home is looking at this
Looking
truck.
at it going,
What
what are you doing?
I think they got caught. Okay.
Careful detective work.
Yes. Should be a TV show. Okay, review information for Little Town Meeting.
Yes. Okay.
So, thank you. We have the warrant, and we should also talk about Little Town Meeting, but for right now, let's go through this. And Dina, do you wanna walk through it?
Yeah, there were a couple questions I had. I have written names by that were in the minutes from the last one,
Mhm.
of board members that will speak to the article and or answer, questions. Number 4, which is semi-annual property tax collection.
Mhm.
I don't have anybody on that one.
I wrote down Marcy, which you thought she could talk
Marcy,
to it.
okay.
I wonder if I'm out of line to say, I wonder if Phil is there, if he could also speak to the $55,000 interest and how this
I'm sure
could
Marcy
benefit.
can include that, but let me make sure she's gonna, I don't know if she's gonna be there tonight, I know she'll be at town meeting. but
Okay,
This is
okay.
for town meeting.
This is for town meeting.
Right,
And I'm happy to speak to it, but I think we have people who are better suited to.
okay, and then the next one that doesn't have anybody is the town operating budget. Is that gonna be you, Judy?
I think so, I have me for that,
Okay.
Article
I
9.
just missed it then.
Um,
And then the next one is 13, which is a tiddly one that, is putting $850 into the rec fund. I can't imagine that Mark can't just, I don't think one of them
Yeah,
has to.
we didn't put anybody in it
Right,
before.
Right, and the bond grant, we don't either. And the public facility capital reserve fund, which is 15, number 15,
Yep,
the
that's,
payment for the fire station, which is,
yep,
pretty self-explanatory. And then the highway and maintenance truck, and
yep, and so
Scott.
if needed, I'll be the board member speaking to it, but we're gonna have Scott and Matt and
Scott will be
Ben
there.
also can speak to that one, since he's the liaison with those guys.
But we'll make sure that on Saturday, okay. And then the, number 17,
I didn't have anything there.
which is, painting the,
17 is.
I mean, the computer.
Computer
right,
equipment.
Right. I don't know that anybody, if somebody needs to know what it's for, I can answer that, but
Yep.
I don't, so, it's okay,
It's,
it's a small thing.
yeah,
And then the fire truck, one of the fire guys will be there to answer
Aaron or
questions. I
somebody,
don't
yeah.
know if Aaron will or not, we have to wait and see. But anyways.
and
someone will.
milfoil. Article 20.
Then the Independence Day one, I don't think needs any explanation, Mark will know, he
Yeah.
knows that that's an in and an out. And then milfoil, you
I
know,
wrote down
think-
Tina.
I think I'm gonna, right, give
Okay.
the info for the grant and that kind of stuff, so.
Now, we didn't go through the rest
Our
of them.
former select board member is not.
Sue,
Susan
She's in Australia.
She's out of town, number one, but number two, no, she doesn't. That they have a separate group that
Oh, I see.
does milfoil picking, which is a great thing that they organize. But this is about the state grant
so
and the money.
Dina, when the meeting is over, if Jordan could, or you, attach everybody's name to the ones and then send it to the three of us. I know you're gonna send it to
I'll do
Mark as
that at the
well.
same time when I send it to
So
Mark,
it
yes.
reminds David and
Okay.
Ben of the ones that they're
Yeah.
speaking to.
Excellent. And then I think that's it for those.
Okay. That's good.
And I can get anybody any info additional that they need.
And then Little Town meeting.
Yeah.
And I have chatted with the moderator, who will be also moderating Little Town meeting tonight, Mark Schiffman. He's, I think, doing a great job trying to track
Mm-hmm.
all of herd the cats, as it were. And I may speak very briefly, or I may not, but he's got a handle on pretty much what's happening, and just also a plea for folks to go to both school district meeting.
So what are we gonna be doing at Little Town meeting?
Nothing.
Nothing.
We're there though.
We
You should be there,
usually are
yes.
there, but you don't, I don't
Are we
think
in
you
the
have.
crowd or?
We don't have to be.
Just in the crowd, I think, yeah.
Mark just stands up there and then, you know, to me, again, you know, it'll be people who are running for offices introducing themselves briefly. Then it will be, I imagine the discussion on the two zoning things will
That'll take a
take a
while.
little while. And then I think he's gonna say, you know, if there's any questions, doesn't mean they get an answer tonight, but then we can take the question and have the answer ready for town meeting.
Right,
No,
Yep.
there's not gonna be any discussion per se about all
As
the
far-
other
as
warrant
far as we
articles
know.
except for zoning, as far as we know, that's right.
and I would say probably an awful lot of people don't have their town report yet.
Yeah, we've got, well, it's at the library, it's at the post office, it's here. A lot of people get it electronically now,
Okay,
so we'll bring copies with us that people will have to look at, so.
As a candidate, will there be questions allowed to the candidates, or is that?
Well, Mark
happen?
did allude to that you could question the candidates, although I was kinda surprised, cause we don't usually do that, but I don't
He did say
remember.
that in his email.
He did say that in his email, and I don't remember that being anything, you know.
Well, be
but-
prepared if that is to happen.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, if he lets someone ask a question,
Right.
he has to let the candidate answer it,
Right.
I would think. But,
Mhm.
I'm still, I know I'm a curmudgeon, but I'm still on the fence that I'm really not sure about Little Town meeting. It seems
I think tonight will be a good
superfluous.
answer.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, when you think about, of course, I think we have that, because now town meeting is not on the voting day,
yeah,
so now there's like 4 meetings, so it seems like a little overwhelming.
Yeah,
yeah.
We'll
it's
see,
a lot.
We'll see.
if it's successful, then it's worth it.
but last year we tried to not do it and just have Judy do it, and that wasn't successful either. 'Cause a
But the
bunch-
year before it
Yeah, the year
The
was.
year
before it
before it
was
was,
wonderful.
right, and then last year, half the candidates
Didn't
didn't
show
show
up,
up, they were.
yeah.
Was there any big races though? I don't think there were too many
Oh, contested races.
contested races.
A budget committee,
That's true, that's true, yeah.
Yeah, that was the only one.
Probably
Interesting.
people didn't think it was sexy.
This year, we have a couple.
Yep.
3, I think.
and we have a
Budget committee, select board, and library trustee, I think it is.
And we have a professor of finance who is running for a trustee of the trust funds. A guy who has taught finance at Dartmouth, had taught for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he came into the town office and said he wanted to sign up for something. So we chatted for a few minutes, and I asked him what he did for work, and I said, oh, have I got a deal for you?
Excellent work, Dee.
Thank you, thank you.
Two thumbs
Seems
up.
like a great guy too, I've never met him, he's new. It's exciting, it's nice to see new people signing up.
He wrote a very thoughtful little candidate blurb.
He did, yeah, I saw that. I can't remember what his name is.
Garacco,
Giraco?
Geracko or
Yeah, I can't, Joseph,
Gerako.
maybe Joseph Draco, or I can't remember what his first name is, but read his thing on the town website,
Mm.
his little candidates thing, those are on that.
I
On the
think
town
when I
report
was in
page.
5th or 6th grade, first day of school, we all had to stand up and say who we were.
Mhm.
And then the teacher would say, now, is that German or French or English or, every kid got labeled.
Oh my
Can you
goodness.
imagine doing that today?
Well, and how long would you have your job,
Would it
right?
be able to?
Zippo.
That's right. Nope.
Yeah.
I have a famous brief family story that we were always listed in New York as Hungarian as kids, because we had to fill that out on our cards.
Mm-hmm.
Until my cousin said, you know why you're Hungarian? No, because I was the first one to go to school. I didn't know how to spell Czechoslovakia.
That's funny. That's a good one. That's the way things get done. So we've talked about town meeting, little town meeting. Do you have other things? Oh, you should hear the Hanover Fire Department sent a really nice letter to the town of Lyme and Thetford, the administration. And basically, it's a huge pat on the back for Thetford and Lyme's fire department, police department, and Hanover's working cooperatively on a cardiac arrest where the rescuers, all three of those towns responded, all three of those towns worked together, were initially successful, unfortunately not.
Well, is that John Stout?
And well, we're not naming who it is, and it doesn't say that, so.
It doesn't say that, and I don't know who it is, but yeah. So that's really nice, and to take the time to send the note, and
Yes, it's very nice.
and then if you wanted, you could read the parking letter, I suppose.
Yeah.
You want to?
It's entertaining.
Oh, stop.
So, that's,
Are we gonna respond to that letter?
Well, it was to the town clerk, and it went to Tony, and I would suspect if anybody's gonna respond to it, Tony should, but
Well, no, the response would be,
thanks.
those roads serve as means of ingress and egress to hundreds of residents. And in addition to the people having to get through those roads, there needs to be place for emergency services in case there's someone who's injured or there's a fire or something like that. And they can't function as overflow parking for the skiway. When people do that, they block those roads. And so the two alternatives available to the police are to write a ticket, which takes more time and is more difficult for them, but is on balance less inconvenient for the person who has violated the parking rules, or to just have the vehicle towed.
I think you've written the letter.
Why don't you, whip that down in an email to me, and then, when I meet with Tony later, I think, or tomorrow, I can.
Well, I don't know if we want to, I mean, the obvious thing to do is just,
let it go.
Right,
Yeah.
well, I think that's what Tony thought, but.
but if
that's-
somebody wants to respond, I'm happy to draft it.
The guardrails weren't mentioned,
No,
just the,
no, that's
the
not.
parking lot was full, and the,
So I'm entitled to
Well,
park on
that's
the road.
the issue. The issue is, when I got there, the parking lot was full. I dropped my children off, went to park, and the only place I could park was in an illegal place, so that's why I parked there. So, you know, the skiway, and the person is angry or upset at, you know, the fact of getting a ticket, but, you know, the skiway needs to provide enough parking for people.
and I know they think we're picking on them, but
I know, but I thought,
Give me a break. If I went into Hanover
Oh.
and I couldn't find a parking spot, so I just park in front of a fire hydrant,
yeah,
and then I got a ticket, I can't imagine the level of self-importance and entitlement it would take for me to write a letter to the town of Hanover saying, oh my gosh, how unneighborly of you to write me a
Yeah.
ticket.
Yeah.
I should have done that.
Well, you know, it's interesting though, because I remember one of the conversations in here when all of this, all the concern came up
The
about the
brouhaha.
guardrail, right? And I thought, and maybe I'm remembering wrong, I thought I remembered that, you know, it was clear that the skiways was not gonna address the traffic in the road, that's not their thing, but that when their parking lot got full and full to capacity, that they would have to send people home, that they wouldn't take any more people, so, you know,
I don't think that's
they,
happening.
of course it's not,
Um,
I'm just saying, they have to
You
take some
know, it
responsibility.
really is a shame and it shouldn't have to be a fight.
No.
I'm not sure what it would cost to pave the parking lot, but if it was paved and striped, we
Oh,
could
or not only that, but
get
I
a
mean,
lot more cars in.
I've parked in dozens of, over the course of my career. Oftentimes, I had worked in offices where it was a high-rise office and the parking under the building was very limited. And so what they do is they hire a valet team, and the valet team,
Yeah.
you don't park yourself, and they stack the cars up, you know, within 6 inches of each other, and some guy's running around, and you know, you have to wait 10 minutes to get your car, or 15 minutes
Yep.
when you wanna leave, but, you know, if you do that, you could double the
Yeah, you
capacity.
could
Well, I
of those
will
lots.
tell you that at the last big event, they did have a parking person, two maybe, I don't remember how many I saw when I
Is
went by.
that the,
And you could tell that, you know, the cars were really parked, and I saw Ivan out there first thing in the morning as I drove by, using a sprayer to
Oh.
spray the lines and make
Yep.
that part, you know.
So
And
you
so
knew where to put
obviously
'em.
that really
made a difference?
made a difference, but,
Yeah.
and I know they're bussing people in like crazy,
Yeah,
and,
they're trying.
you know, they can only do so much,
Mm.
but they could do a little bit more maybe, like have parking people on busy days.
Yeah, but you know what?
I mean, when
At the
they
end of
know
the
it's
day,
gonna be busy.
That is not our problem.
No, it isn't.
You know what, we're not, it's not our job to figure out how Dartmouth College runs its skiway.
That's right.
But it is our job to make sure that those roads are unencumbered and
That's right.
accessible for people who live there or for emergency services. And you know, people wanna park on those roads, they should be towed or ticketed,
Right,
I think.
yeah,
Yeah, it's too bad.
it is.
I
It's
mean,
hard.
they're really booming, and
I know, it's been a great ski season too.
so, anyway,
Yeah,
that was the other letter, and I am not aware of anything else, but I do believe
you do have to have a
we
quick
have a
non-public.
quick non-public. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if there should be non-public or not. I have a brief update from council on the ongoing litigation with the Smiths. And this doesn't really relate to legal stuff. I wrote to Joe to ask if we'd gotten a ruling on our motion to take pictures yet, and
Via a
and
drone.
we have not, but then I also followed up to ask him, because when I went to court, the Smiths were representing themselves and didn't have counsel, and Joe tells me that they no longer have counsel. Which, their counsel was sometimes difficult. I'm not unambiguous, I wasn't unambiguously a fan, but on balance, I think it was better that they were represented than it's gonna be with them representing themselves. I think we're likely to get more sort of off the wall, irrational, difficult to deal with stuff.
Mhm.
But
Okay, thank you for that.
that's the news.
We will probably, I think we are expecting they will be at town meeting, and there may be some discussion, and
I'm sure.
I know people are wondering what's happening, so.
Well, and there's that $100,000 warrant article.
Yep, yep.
Generate a lot
Yeah,
of
that's when we're
discussion.
gonna get the discussion.
Yeah, right.
Well, if we didn't have council, we wouldn't need it. We didn't have the situation, we wouldn't need it. Okay, I think I will move for us to go into non-public session. By the way, folks, loyal audience,
Are you gonna say this? I don't think, yeah, I think you have one more.
you sure?
I don't know.
I've heard,
Town meeting's not till Thursday, till Saturday.
I heard you got all of the year.
Harvey's probably listening.
Yeah, right. He's sleeping.
Oh, okay.
Is this your
Yeah, I
last
don't know.
official meeting?
I think that you have to.
Well, I think town meeting is my last, but I think this is our last
Okay.
board meeting. But I'm not sure.
Well, I
Could be
was
the one
thinking-
after town meeting.
I don't know, I guess it depends on.
Well,
when it
just in
official-
case.
Yes, there you go.
There isn't another one, and I thank you both for your loyalty and your comments. I think it's been helpful, and
See, I have
David
mixed-
and Ben.
Mixed feelings, you know, you've been great, and it's been a pleasure having you and working with you. On the other hand, I'm not sure I would have ever gotten into this gig.
If it wasn't for me.
you, so-
So good riddance, right? No, you guys, really, I think it's been such a good group, and I hope for the future.
And let me say,
Are you staying on in
I
any
can't believe
capacity?
it.
Are you doing any of
But
you're not gonna do the election stuff, or?
Well, I might, but right now I'm not. I'm really looking forward to not having any meetings, any obligations, to just, oh,
So you're like
today
the
I-
president, once you're done, you're not taking some lesser.
That's right,
position.
that's right.
she's building a library on Pinnacle Road.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right, the whole show.
Yeah.
I just wanna every once in a while sleep in or
Well,
do something at night.
I know I appreciate immensely as a community member and as an employee, all the hours, time, years, emotions you
Yeah.
put into this.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of years,
It's
not
somewhere,
just this time, but the last time too,
and the time before that, it's,
and the time before
yeah.
that.
So it's close to 20 years for town service.
Yeah.
Someday I should sit down and figure it out. I think
Uh-huh.
it's a lot.
That's called
It is.
experience, you have enough
That's
experience to
right.
run again.
Okay, so we will now move into non-public session.
From the public side, I want to really thank you for how hard you work, how thoughtful you are, how you listen to everybody, how responsive you are to questions.
Thank you.
I think it has been marvelous for me to be able to sit here and watch you work.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so I thank you
I
greatly.
know, it's nice to have at least one nice person on it.
Yeah.
And I wanna tag
Wait a
on,
minute, I told her over the weekend she almost met Paranoid Angry Phil.
I wanted to tag onto what Phil says, and I really appreciate not only your work, Judy. This is a lot of work, and I
This is a
really,
lot of work.
you know,
Yeah,
sometimes I don't agree with you, but I totally appreciate the time and the dedication you put into the town.
thank you.
So-
That's really nice. And you know, the board will go on. These two guys are here for a while. And it's a good group. We don't always agree. Often we can come to a middle position, but it takes a lot of work to get there.
Does.
And
But
at least,
disagreements are handled respectfully,
Yes.
Mhm.
and they're not personalized, they're not made, they stay on issues rather than on people, which is unusual in lots and lots of board.
yeah, and it's
I
unusual
know,
in
you
towns.
read what, like, the exchanges at the on the Norwich listserv, or it's like, oh my gosh.
Well, and apparently the Orford town meeting gets to be really,
Hartford is doing terrible things to their board chair.
yeah,
Personalizing all kinds of stuff about Twin Pines and housing and making it about her rather than the issue.
that's really too bad, yeah. The Upper Valley has got some angst right now. It's calm and peaceful.
All right.
Okay.
All right, I'm
non-public
turning this
session.
off, so
Yes, thank
must
you.
be time.